All right, so I want to read this first before anything because this is amazing. They were powerful beings and were interested in us. Their intentions are difficult to determine, as some of them were clearly trying to help us, but others wanted to manipulate or be worshipped. Some of them. Why would they? Oh, I just came on over here. Why would they want to be worshipped? I think the desire to be worshipped goes beyond any self serving vanity. They were interested in our attention and therefore our energy. They knew that to create and flourish, they needed our attention. So this is just, oh, and then it goes on to saying, so that's all up in the past, right? Not necessarily. Perhaps the names have just changed and our attention still serves a purpose. This is the kind of book that isn't just listing things from history and showing the reader anomalies. You are making connections in this that bring up like emotions within the reader. And it's making connections that today in our modern world are tying to ancient things, which are these, what's modern, what's ancient are two sides of the same coin. And we are still living with these familiar archetypes all these years later. So and you'll see here, I got a bunch of marks here of things I'd like to talk about. Guys, I cannot recommend this book enough. When I saw your talk at the Jungian Institute in Melbourne, and
Yes.
I bought your book immediately, and I went through it quick. I couldn't put it down. So I might as well ask you, before we get into all this, how did you get your start? And tell us about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Joy. First of all, I'm so glad to be on your show. I
Thank
really
you.
admire, like when I was introduced to your show, I really admire your ability to simplify complex ideas and also the visuals. We're talking about it because I do not have this kind of talent about visuals. So I do research, I go on a wild spiritual journey, and I write, and I love sharing what I have found out with others. But the visual part is not my talent, and it's definitely yours. So congratulations on your show.
Thank
So
you.
I'm really happy to be here, and I'm
Good,
also
good.
very happy that you enjoy this book.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get your first one now, The Other Goddesses, because if this did this to me, I'm really curious about your first one.
Thank you so much. So if you don't mind, I perhaps would just describe the first one, so also. So the
Please.
other goddess, Mary Magdalene and the goddesses of Eros and secret knowledge, it is basically came up from my spiritual journey when I wanted to write about sexuality and spirituality, because I thought that the topic was very much misunderstood. By that, I mean that everything we learn about sexuality is kind of occulted now. Right? So it is inverted wisdom, when in fact the actual wisdom of sexuality and spirituality was passed over through esoteric sources to uplift us. And not only that I studied this, like 10th century tantric works by one of the biggest philosophers of India, with people who translated it from Sanskrit scholars, but I also had an experience to top it up. So so I always like to, and this is what I did with Alien Goddess. So let's move to Alien Goddess, UFOs, AI, and the Goddesses of Ascension. It is a combination of experiences and research. The reason my own and other people experiences and research, because I think that all of us here, we have experiences and we try to make sense out of them.
Right.
So my way of making sense out of it, apart from spiritual practice of my own, is to do research.
Right. As a spiritual detective. That's how I kind of see it. And I love that title.
Thank you. That's why I called myself spiritual detective, for this reason, because I thought it's experience and it's research, and you go there into the rabbit hole and you come back and tell people what you have found out. So that's the mission of a spiritual detective. And also, to be honest, Joey, and I'm speaking it as a female researcher that's talking about the feminine divine and so on, there's a lot of delusion there.
Yes,
okay, because so if I am the priestess, or I am, and I think I don't, it's too good for your ego. You understand? Like there's a spiritual ego involved in this. When
Right.
you are a spiritual detective, it means I'm just a seeker. I'm
Right.
just, I just go over, I experience something, I want to know and share with others.
Right.
And then it keeps you honest, and it keeps you humble. Yeah.
Right. I've declared myself to be a lifelong student, and I even get a little uncomfortable when people refer to me as like a teacher or whatever other names are go with that, because I'm just the same as anybody else. The only difference is I jam pictures into it and talk a bunch of smack. But you talk about one of your experiences in the book. That you kind of compared to a DMT experience, or maybe even that of an abduction, which is okay. Well, first of all, thank you for including these elements in your work, considering that you're a doctor. It's risky to talk about these things and maintain that that you got that PhD and all that stuff. You got the letters, and it's risky. And you compare that to the shadow elements, because you say that where our shadow is within is our strength, and those parts that we might not want the world to see might just be where our strength is at. And I love that about this, because that allows you to write the things that you're writing with the firsthand experiences that you've had. And what else struck me about this is that I just put out the video Entities in Gray. Whenever I was reading your book, it was like a day after I dropped that episode. And I was like, we're on the same page. We've read the same books. We both read Inner Paths to Outer Space. And I mean, just a whole bunch of other books that every time you mentioned one, Rupert Sheldrake's Prisons of Angels, every time you mentioned one, I pulled it off the shelf and I was like, me and this lady are reading the same books. And then when I was getting ready for this interview, this one came in the mail, which I have not read yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But can you tell us a little bit about your spiritual experience, particularly the one you talk about? Let's see, what was it? I lost it here. The one towards the beginning of your book.
Okay, which one? Because there were many.
Yeah. Okay, so an interdimensional encounter took place several years ago. I was going through a difficult time, ironically, after having finished my PhD.
Oh, okay. Is it about the two elongated beings?
Yes, the yellow light.
Yes.
And abstract features. I would love to hear more about this one.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So maybe I'll give people some background. Okay,
Sure.
So I'm actually originally from Poland, and I travel, lived in Sweden, France, Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen, got my degrees at the University of Toronto, traveled to Asia, taught there, and now I'm in Australia. And I'm in Australia and in Brisbane, right? But I lived in Melbourne before. So I did my PhD in Australia and in Melbourne. And then, my career was doing very well until I had a spiritual awakening, which happened at the time that I was finishing my PhD. I had a huge spiritual experiences that I do not describe in this book, but in my previous book.
Okay.
And the other goddess, because I had a spiritual teacher, I went for initiation, which was a mind-blowing experience for me. I actually found myself for a moment out of space-time continuum. It was a mind-blowing experience. Then I started to study tantric texts, and then I had a spiritual experience with this. And then, as I thought that I'm on this path of kind of esoteric Hinduism, I met two men who asked me to go with them to Jerusalem because they thought they made some archaeological discoveries. And they asked me to write a book, which is a book I don't even mention. It's the first book that I wrote. It has nothing to do with any of these 3 books. So I just finished my PhD and my career was doing really well. And I finished my PhD and bang, all the doors closed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes. When you think that things are actually going to truly take off, and I was doing really well. You know,
Right.
like they came to me, like, we want you to do PhD with us. This is the job. And then I did it, and then bang, I think all of us experience the situation that in life when all the doors close, right? And it's like, what's now? And
Right.
I made a mistake, which is, I think, is very common, that we start to bang our heads against the closed door. Like, how dare you to close? I need the income. I need, this is my career.
Right.
When usually, or probably all the time, when something like this happens, it is usually because it means we have to go on a different path.
Yep.
But I didn't want to accept it.
Yeah. I 100% get it. There's times where I'm like, if I was smart, I would go this way, but that door is closed and there's something shoving me in this direction, and it can't be fought.
It can be fought. Yeah. You're
Right.
right.
So that limiting, that door shutting led you into doing stuff like this, which is what I think your true calling is, because had you followed that PhD into what you're supposed to be doing, I wouldn't know what your name is and I wouldn't be holding this, so this is what I think was your gift to the world. And whenever it shuts you down on all fronts except for this, I mean, it's trying to funnel you into that direction, but that requires, well, a kind of a form of descent, out of your comfort zone, which ironically is exactly what we're going to be talking about with Inanna and Sophia, and this timeless archetype of the divine feminine that comes into from the great above into the great below on a mission. And the problem with that mission is that there's an amnesia that takes place whenever there's a forgetting. So which version of the story do you find the most drawn to, the Inanna or the Sophia, or do you think that's just all under the same umbrella?
I think it is all the same, actually. So I think I noticed it even in my earlier book, in The Other Goddess, that there is a kind of a lineage, when I thought, like, of goddesses, of priestesses, of this kind of archetype that, was there in the shadows as our civilization was developing in one particular way and was trying to, like, teach us something different. Which I would, you can call it. We actually do not have a proper vocabulary for this, although in Christian theology they have something like called intellection. Thomas Aquinas brought it, which is immediate knowing. There's no reasoning. The Buddhi is in esoteric Hinduism, which is exactly like, the higher intellect, but it's not an intellect. It's kind of intuitive knowing, right? So it's kind of sudden Satoris. And there was this lineage of wisdom which was somehow suppressed. And I was thinking, okay, who is representing this lineage? And in that book, I asked myself the question, okay, is it just an archetype, in a Jungian way? Is it that there are some kind of entities, I don't know, aliens or whatever you want to call them? Or is it that actually these are some kind of entities that did exist and reincarnated through time, or maybe they're always here? So I asked myself this question in The Other Goddess, and after writing Alien Goddess, do not laugh, but I actually personally believe that some of this and most of these entities actually existed and continue to exist.
It's always both. I've noticed that when it comes to allegory versus literal, I find that more times than none, it's not only both, but it's not even a little bit of both. It's all the way both on each side, because our interpretation of it becomes allegory. And the reason we have these allegories in the first place was because something literally did happen.
So this is what I believe, that this is actually some of these entities actually really walked the earth and also on the earth and also continue to be here. So the names change,
Right.
The stories are adjusted for a cultural understanding.
Right.
But they are the same entities, and the same entities want to tell us something. They tell us the story about humanity. And I think we all agree that the story we are being told, which is strictly materialistic, evolutionary, physically evolutionary story, it's not really right, that the dating of our civilization is not really right. And there are a lot of great writers who talk about it, right? So I'm not going into the archaeology of it, because it was one topic that I was interested in, but I was actually not very good at. I'm better with ideas, like looking at an artifact and seeing something that is not my thing, because I'm not a visual person. But I'm good with ideas, so I started to work on this. So I believe that this always existed, that there's someone who was always trying to teach us something about the history of humanity, because I do believe in evolution of humanity, but I think that our evolution is primarily spiritual.
Right.
Like it's evolution of consciousness. Let's put it this way, if you're not comfortable with spiritual, right?
I think there's no greater proof of a divine source than that of an evolution. And I don't mean that in the Darwinian sense, but even in the Darwinian sense, that is what an underlining intelligence is doing, is whenever it creates an imprint of itself in the physical form, it's not going to be a freeze frame. It's going to be a motion picture. It's going to be something that's constantly changing, because it wants to live and evolve through us.
Absolutely.
And that requires that descent, into physical form, where it's up to us to take on that painful alchemy, that to realize, while we're in this forgetting, where we came from in the first place. And that's, the greatest sacrifice, in the story of Inanna. This is one of my favorite parts, is you break down what she had to give up in order to make this descent. And it seems to take on the form of, you offered 2 or 3 different interpretations of this myth. And one of them was the chakra system, which I do like that one. But then you elaborate on that even more. Let's see if I can find that part. It's the descent of Inanna, which is the Sumerian. I don't know what came first, the Sumerian or the Gnostic. I guess it'd be the Sumerian.
Yes.
Yeah. But let's see, where's it at here? I got so many tabs in here but it starts with her crown.
Yes.
And she gives up her crown, and then she has to give up, let's see, where's it at here? And then her earrings.
Yes.
And then her so crown, earrings, necklace of beads, breastplate, scepter or gold ring, girdle or belt. So it's obviously working its way down until eventually it gets to 7, which, so there's that number 7. But ankle bracelets or final garment, which it could be the root chakra or whatever. But you offer a different interpretation of that. But she knew she could not descend from the higher to the lower realms, and yet she decided to do so anyway. This is something they do on their own accord. They're volunteering for this,
Yes.
And I think that's a huge misconception, especially in the same myth of Sophia, where people think that she was lonely or got trapped or tripped up or whatever. Yeah. But no, this was something that she did in order for the betterment of all of the pleroma,
And I think it is also a kind of a blueprint for our own descent and ascent. So if you want, because you started with Inanna, perhaps I'll explain the myth of Inanna first, right? So It's the descent of Inanna, which is a very ancient myth, and there are many interpretations. However, I think I decided to give a different interpretation, which goes in line with the evolution of consciousness. So first of all, goddess Inanna, and we can interpret it, whether she was really in the sky, but she was in a higher level of consciousness. She was like a highly evolved being, far above, right? And she decided to go far below. It is her own choice. And in each case that I discuss, the goddesses, they make a choice to descend because they know it is dangerous. But as they descend, they have to give up all that power. And before even I go into deeper explanation of the descent of goddess Inanna, this is present in all philosophies, also in Platonic and Neoplatonic philosophies, and in Hinduism, that there are beings that descend to denser levels of consciousness or beingness, like 3D, like I own, and then there is a moment of amnesia. You forget that you're actually a divine being. And the whole story actually about the alien goddess for us is that we are the same beings. We came from this source. We are powerful, and each of us has a sense of mission. I think we all feel the sense of mission. And if depression ever strike us, it is because we forgot. We don't know what the mission is, because we forgot a connection with the source. Because in this form of reality, we see ourselves only as material beings, right? And we are conditioned to believe so. So anyway, Inanna goes, and as she's going down, she has her female servant with her, Ninshibur, and she says, you know, if I don't come back in 3 days, it's interesting, yeah? It's always 3 days.
It's always 3, right?
It's 7, 3, you know, the sacred numbers, and it's carried on to Christianity as well, right? So start beating the drums and go to the gods to remind them, you know, of me. So it's really interesting because she basically, this is really a metaphor for if I forget my own greatness. You know, there's this faint memory. So Ninshibur represents this faint memory that we are here on a mission. We are all divine beings. It's very positive, but we are just lost in this 3D. You know, it's a really weird reality. It's beautiful, but it's haunting, right? We really struggle. Anybody with any sense of sensitivity, you know, it is a struggle, right? And yet there's this, I look out of the window, you know, I live in subtropical Australia, and it is immensely beautiful. But there is, you know, this beauty, there's this suffering, there is, you know, confusion, and there is great wisdom. So she says, you know, there's Ninshibur represents this faint memory of Inanna's greatness. And as Inanna enters the underworld, you know, there is of course, a gatekeeper, right? And the gatekeeper says, first of all, he's surprised, like, wow, the super goddess, why is she, you know, coming here? And she says, yeah, I want to see my sister, you know, because her husband, I want to see him for her husband's funeral. And then he says, okay, but to descend, you have to give up at each gate. She has to give up something. So in Alien Goddess, I explained that the crown is like a crown chakra. Basically, the first thing we lose is the awareness, you know, of our connection with the source, basically, because it's the crown chakra
antenna.
The antenna. We lose it. And okay, and then it's a slow descent that we all know, right? And then you lose your ability to speak, you know, in a proper way, express yourself in a proper way. You know, so you lose everything, and at the end, she also, you use the ability to the right action, right? So our actions are confused because we are suddenly confused, and at the end, which is at the gate 7 with the ankles, you know, and bracelet, she's actually losing her divine body. Right. So she's suddenly completely embodied. And then when she descends, she's suddenly put into in a court, you know, she's being judged. Right. And it is determined that she has to be killed, and she's killed, and her rotten body is on the wall, hanging on the nail for 3 days and 3 nights.
There's that 3 again.
So she is basically completely lost. She has she's dead. You know, she's spiritually dead. But Ninshibur at the gates remembers, right, that Ninanna descended, and she starts to beat the drums. This is the memory, you know, do not forget your own greatness. And she goes from one Anunnaki god to another, and everybody says, you know, she knew what she was doing. You knew that descending was a dangerous thing, yet you chose to descend, right? So, and only one of the Anunnaki gods decides to help her. So he sends 2 beings, right, that can get into the underworld unnoticed, that deceive people who killed Inanna, that give her the bread and water of life. Isn't it interesting? Another metaphor that comes back over and over again, and bring Inanna back. However, before she leaves the underworld, there is another deception. So there are two deceptions in each story. The deception is that there are suddenly the 7 judges appear, the 7 galas, they call them, appear, who say, oh, you cannot leave until you give up something that is very dear for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting story is that they tell her that they are very powerful, when in fact they are not.
Right. Okay.
So this is again a metaphor for our times, I would say, right? They
right.
think like we believe them, but it's not true.
Right.
So, but now because she lost her divine discernment, divine wisdom, right?
Yeah.
She believes them, and then she has to give up something that is very dear for her, and in fact, it's her lover Dumuzi, right?
Yeah,
Who kind of betrayed her when she was there, and so on. So this is the story of Inanna, but which, in my opinion, really reflects the story of a descent of human consciousness, actually of a divine consciousness into the current human level of consciousness, forgetfulness of our own greatness.
Right.
And the fact that because we lost this discernment, we actually believe the rulers of the world, that they are powerful, and all the conditioning that they give us, right? And
right
now
off the bat,
we
in
are
school, like you mentioned, looking out the window, it's beautiful, nature is beautiful, but everything that humans make, design, and speak of, whether it's the TV, the news, or anything, even our schooling system is meant to keep us in this particular physical cube, completely ignorant and forgetful of not only all of these myths, but that we carry the myths inside of us.
That's right. And I really am glad that you mentioned it, because it's actually very painful for me to say, because, from an external point of view, until even before I went on my spiritual path, I was very well educated, and I loved, knowledge. And even like with my first husband, who went around the world to the most beautiful university campuses around the world, because they were my temples. And now I feel like, oh my goodness, wisdom is somewhere else. So it was
right. You have to strip away all of these layers. Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt though to be armed with that ammunition, because you have that knowledge that you've accumulated over the years. But just understanding, I think that it's been twisted out of our hands just a little bit. It allows us to offer our own unique interpretations of them, which is exactly what you do here.
Thank you for saying it, because what it gave me, it is discernment.
Right.
So it means like, okay, I have to check my sources. That's a very good habit.
Right.
And very often I see people who are not doing this, and in this
welcome
respect,
to YouTube. Yeah.
Right. So in this case, being academically trained helped me. It's just I'm using it for different things. Okay, let's check, who said it? What is the agenda? Is there an agenda behind it? Is it a true spiritual experience? So this helps me on my detective work. Let's put it this way.
You mentioned in the story of Inanna, they left out the first line, which is repeated 3 times. And I checked my copy of it. Sure enough, it's not there. So you had to go find that original text to even know that it was there in the first place. And that first line was, it's not off the top of my head, but the reason I say that is because in the Gnostic Sophia, we are familiar with, pages 1 through 5 are missing. So are pages, something teen or whatever. But outside of those missing, they leave out also the very first 4 instructions of Sophia, and they skip straight to 6. So what they're doing is they're leaving out the foundation of it. And what's so funny about that is Inanna had to give up to pass these 7 gates. She had to give up the 7 things. And in the same story, which I consider the same story of Sophia, we've got the 7 steps right there. So this is the Christian counterpart, or I should say Gnostic counterpart of the Inanna story. But I mean, there's the steps, and they're labeled the same. And that's absolutely fascinating. But to leave out the first line of Inanna and the first 4 steps of Sophia is enraging, if I might say so,
Okay. That's right. I agree. But do you mind if I made just a small correction?
Please,
So
yes.
in Inanna, it's far from above. The goddess Inanna descended to far below, and it's repeated 3 times because, for example, in Greek tragedies, or obviously in Sumer as well, because we have less information about Sumer because it's much older civilization. The first 3 lines is like a choir. It sets up the bigger picture. So the bigger picture is that she's from somewhere else,
right,
whether it is a higher level of consciousness or is it some kind of planet or different dimension and so on. She descends because it's repeated 3 times. So if you repeat it 3 times, it's kind of like an incantation, but it means it is actually the most important thing of the story. And in many translations, it is just boring. So this is when people don't understand that this is really important. Like far from above, she descends to far below, and it's repeated: far from above to far below, far from above to far below. So this is really important. But when you mention Sophia, actually, it is in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that the pages are missing. I hope you don't mind me to saying it. It's just again because in Sophia,
I messed that up. That's please, let me know. That's why I have you on the show.
Thank you. And I know that you had to read it really fast, and somebody just told me, I'm just like, it's just so much information. So in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, exactly the first few pages are missing. And it could be, let's see how it looks. So I admire the scholars because I was supposed to be doing work like that. And I said, I don't think so, because it takes like decades to just, translate, right?
I can't
prefer
imagine.
to read it, as it is. So few first pages and the pages in the middle are missing simply because the papyri, it was found in pieces, and there are different versions of it, right? So then we had to but actually it is beautiful because what is preserved, can be reconstructed, and it still gives us what we need to know, right? So this is actually in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which divides it into 2 parts, so to speak. One is, what happens before the crucifixion and after, and the teachings of Mary Magdalene, or really the teachings of Jesus that Mary Magdalene was given by him, but no one else was given. Other disciples don't have it. And these are actually in the Gospel. I don't know if you want me to speak about it. So just for people, the reason why I really go into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it is because I studied it as a scholar and as a seeker for over 20 years. Okay, so I not only study it, but I actually, lots of people look for initiation. And I would like to tell people that if you commit yourself to any sacred text, of your choice, the one that calls you, and with devotion, it will initiate you.
Right. This is a self-initiation. Right.
Yes, actually, it is initiation by the text, I would say. It's because every text has an energy. Every sacred text has an energy. So in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and the reason why I talk about it almost at the very end and dissect it in so many ways with the ancient Egyptian tradition, with Carl Jung, and everything else, Neoplatonic tradition, it is because she gives us 4 steps for ascension, how to get out of this mess, basically, because we are in a mess. And it really, it really depends on the choices we make. So I would like people to focus now. It really depends for all of us from which level of our own consciousness we make every simple choice. Because we can do it from a materialistic point of view, right? We can make it out of desire, lower or higher. We can make it from ignorance or wisdom, and so on. So this is really, she designs these 4 levels of consciousness which are available to us at any time. It's just which one do you choose to act from, right? And the good news, if you don't mind me to say something practical, is that if we don't know what choice to make in life, right, then make the choice that you would normally not do.
That what was it?
If you have to make a choice, because in a crossroads, there is a fork in the road, right?
Yeah. If you don't
make
know what to do,
the choice that you didn't do before.
Right.
And I will tell you why. So this is the basic teaching actually there.
Right.
Why? Because if you make the choice that you would normally do, you're back in the loop.
That's very interesting, because by deliberately choosing what road is not that we are, maybe we're afraid of it, or maybe it's got more bushes in the way, it's more troublesome, or we're just programmed to go this way because this is what we know best. We are essentially letting our own programming, the world, the external world, decide for us, instead of doing what we know is right within us. And by choosing the more difficult road, you're basically surrendering to that higher trust of whatever it is that's going to allow you to get, because it's going to take you there one way, or screaming or not, and that's an important distinction to make, because I find myself sometimes on that slippery slope of doing what feels comfortable or what I think is going to work, and the entire time I'll be fighting against this thing that wants to burst out of me.
Very well put, very eloquently put, Joy. So I thank you that that you actually feel it. But even if some people, or sometimes we are not tuning in intuitively even to what we should be doing. So if in a moment that you really don't know, like I give up,
Right.
I don't see anything in front of me, and I've been there many times, in my life. Do something that you didn't do before.
Right.
You understand? Because and without self-judgment even, because have the wisdom that if you do what you did in the past, whether it is job wise, whether it is relationship wise, whether it's about your spiritual choices and so on, it's okay, but you're looping again. It's like reincarnation within the same life. Oh, so it's okay, maybe different man, different girl, the same story, maybe different job, yeah, the same story. So if you want to keep looping, keep looping. But if you think like, I'm so sick and tired of this,
yeah,
then you normally think that I normally go this way, just go that way.
right.
Even if you have no intuition which way to go, just go the opposite way.
Yeah.
And this is where salvation lies, because this opens the doors of perception. This opens everything. This is what salvation is. This is like, it opens the doors to new consciousness, and you can create only something new with a new consciousness. So another practical, I know we would like to talk esoterically, but sometimes people ask me for a more practical advice. So this is what I would like to say, that, and I did it too. There is some difficulty in life, and we try to fix it. Nothing external can be fixed by external action without looping back into the same situation. So what we have to do, we have to enter some different level of consciousness by making different choices. And then the things outside rearrange themselves. But that requires inner work. And in our current civilization, nobody gives us room to work on ourselves, right? You have to be a vagabond, right? Like we are vagabonds. So if you want to change something in your life, you have to work on this. And then it will rearrange itself. Otherwise, it's like a crazy chess game. You move this piece in a good place, the other one is a bad place. There's no way of winning it. And this is what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene teaches. And this is the Gospel of Thomas teaches, when esoteric works. So work on yourself. It is within you, right? Otherwise, you can change external reality only through changing your internal reality. Otherwise, you lost the game and you're looping forever.
Then I think that is of utmost importance, because one thing you're right about is that a lot of people consider the esoteric traditions to be like the word occult is kind of poisoned with this form of magic. And what they're missing out on is that what the ancient people in these texts refer to as magic is literally practicality, the law of cause and effect, but applied wisdom throughout these things. And if people are looking at the esoteric tradition as an image, which mythologically speaking it is, they'll be missing the point of the practicality of it, because these myths are meant to teach us how to live our life in the mundane, but in a, dare I say, magical way. Because if you change the external world, all you want and all you're doing is just stirring the pot. Whereas if you do that really uncomfortable thing that you didn't think that door was even available, and you make those sacrifices like Anana did, you're changing what's going on within. All of a sudden, you get done with that really uncomfortable part of it. You open your eyes and, oh my gosh, it's the same world out there, but now it's colored differently. It's got a different hue to it. And now you're seeing opportunity you wouldn't have otherwise seen. I'm reminded of the phrase, everything that you desire is on the other side of fear. And that's what this entire archetype covers in the first place. And it's like that whenever people talk about the DMT, which you mentioned DMT in this book, along with abduction and stuff like that. And the way you tie it into mythology is absolutely brilliant. But people are always talking about, well, if DMT is such a big deal, how come no one ever brings anything back? And that's what I wanted my last video to be, was like, no, if we do, but it has to be integrated, and it's not something physical you can hold. It's something that is to be learned from. And you talk about, that discomfort that you have whenever facing, like even Jesus told Mary, he said, you're the only one who could see my image in its rawest, truest form and not be frightened of it, which is an ageless archetype, from like Thomas Aquinas to even modern alien abductions. When you talk about John Mack, these people, they talk about seeing this formless archetype, or this entity in its truest form, and it's despairingly uncomfortable to look at. But if we recognize it as being padded by our own, it's an extension of ourselves, it can be overcome. But that part, that it's a searing heat to get through that pain of seeing something in its rawest form, especially when it's a reflection of us, because we oftentimes reject parts of ourselves that are literally a doorway to higher consciousnesses.
Absolutely. And I would love to, so maybe we can move to alien abductions and aliens, but I just want to also discuss a couple of things, because I think people may be interested in it. First of all, the whole story of this mythology is that we are divine beings in a 3D reality. Remember this. You do have a meaning. Your life has a meaning. You have a mission, and you don't know, you know what it is. It doesn't have to be a big mission. And just because we have a mission doesn't mean that you have to be rich and famous, okay? Because it's a completely different, because when we think things like that. Another thing is, before we move to alien abductions, it is when we talk about magic, and I discuss it in Via the Goddess, there are two forms of magic that are being discussed. So one is a lower magic, which is, the Wicca tradition. I don't want to insult anyone, it's a very good tradition. But it's basically the magic that we are normally exposed to, which means it is only within the material world. So basically you get something, you give up something. There's like, reward and punishment, you rearrange physical elements. This is a really lower magic, and it may have, adverse effects. Then there's a higher magic. This is the one that you rearrange, and this is what Mary Magdalene is talking about, from within. So basically you rearrange the divine order, so in the matrix of a divine mind, you rearrange it, so you correct it for a higher level. So this is the higher magic. This higher magic is a divine magic. It's not the low magic. I would do something, so I would put a spell and I become famous, but I have to lose something. This is the lower magic. Higher magic, in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, she says, it basically says that the whole reality is being changed from above, because you have access to this divine, almost like Platonic world of ideas, and you can rearrange them from a highest level of consciousness. And this is the high magic. Now, when we talk about Gnosticism or esoterica versus occult, can I just clarify it again? I'm sorry. I think it's important, because there's lots of confusion, especially on YouTube, about it. Occult is a inverted esoterica. So they use these higher teachings that were always on the fringe and margins of main spiritual or religious movements, but they're mostly only for the initiated because they didn't want to be misused.
Right.
And they misuse them. So occult very often does it like sex magic for money and fame and sacrifice, which is a horrible thing.
Right.
When actually, in esoteric tantra, it actually brings enlightenment.
Okay.
But so occult is an inverted esoterica. Okay, I want people to understand. Then, so that's why in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, this distinction is actually made very clearly. So that's why I wanted to write this book, so to avoid this kind of confusion. So remember, occult is an inverted esoterica.
Right.
Okay.
I'm reminded that everyone quotes the line from Hermes, as above, so below. But the second line is, as it is below, so it is above. And
that's it.
Yeah,
and I would actually change it, as it is within, so it is without.
Right.
So it is really, and actually even Einstein had a good intuition about it, of his scientific mind, because he says you cannot change the situation with the same level of consciousness that created the situation.
Right.
So if you're in a situation and with your current state of mind, you want to change the situation, you can't. You loop.
That's the same as taking that same door.
It's the same door. You're going back through the same door. Okay, so now when I said all of this, sorry, you wanted to tell me about these two beings, right?
I'm not quite ready for that yet, because I want to stick on this for just a moment, because I want to talk to, I can talk to anybody about alien abduction. I want to talk to you about Mary Magdalene, and because people who are familiar with the channel know that one of my oldest videos was pretty much going off on Pope Gregory in the 16th century, in the 1600s, when he called Mary Magdalene a prostitute, and it's stuck ever since. And there's even churches today who believe that to be so, even though that there is not a scrap of evidence in that direction. And the fact that Mary Magdalene was given secret teachings because she was more intuitive than the other disciples were, and there's no question as to why that is. Women are more intuitive than men are, and so everyone can talk about equality all they want, but we are different, and women have a more psychic, dare I say, quality to than men do. And then it went down in history. In fact, like, there's paintings, of the disciples being mad at Mary Magdalene because she was given the lowdown. But there's no reason for them to be upset. The fact of the matter is, she had an intuition that allowed her to absorb the teachings of Jesus without running away. And so you talk about Jung in here, which is perfect for all this. But in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there's a choice to ascend or descend at each step. And the level of consciousness of at least some of the most visible creators of AI, and this is where it gets to get a little spicy, they have chosen to movement towards descent at each level. And what's super interesting about that is you talk about the demiurge, or a pretender god, who creates from the lower energies of manipulation, causing chaos and confusion that in turn helps keep humans and all creation subservient to them, which gets back to our previous quote. But if AI is created from a lower aspect of consciousness, then by default, it becomes an egregore. And this is important because that egregore needs our attention in order to live and to survive. An entity that is potentially malevolent. At some time, if AI had been created from a heightened state of consciousness, then it would be ethereal. And consequently, it is not AI that might be problematic, but rather the state of mind and intentionality of the creators of AI. And I cannot think of a better verbiage to lay that out, because when we first talked, we spoke about the exciting nature of AI as a tool and as a reference manual and as a way to gather information. However, as we spoke on the phone, we both kind of admitted our total how disappointed we are in some of these so-called gurus or whatever. And Deepak Chopra or whatever, using AI for his scripts or whatever, and he's on the Epstein list anyway, so we can forget about him. But
oh my goodness, isn't he?
yeah,
Oh
you see
my
that? Yeah, it's getting rough
oh,
out
it's
there.
hilarious.
But people
In
are
a
using,
horrible way, you know.
yeah, but people are using AI as their decision-making modules instead of a tool, and it's kind of sickening, you know, and because it's going to be in everyone's hands. And talk about casting, you know, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was written in a kind of code to where not everyone could understand what was being said about it. In that same way, AI is going to be in the hands of, well, everybody, you know.
That's true. So would you like me to first, maybe I'll start first with Gospel of Mary Magdalene and then we move towards AI. Okay. Is it okay? How would you like me to go about it? Because I want to say about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, because you mentioned something about women and men. So I just want to say that I'm not a proponent of this kind of form of feminism that is men against women. I completely don't believe in it. I think that both women and men are equal but different. And I think it's true in any form of consciousness. Okay.
Right.
So I'm not against men at all. In fact, I think that there is divine masculine and there is this divine feminine. What I argue in my both books, you know, which I wrote within 3 years, both of them, it is that the divine feminine was suppressed, and this is not good for humanity's spiritual evolution. Not because divine feminine is better than a divine masculine, but because there has to be balance between the masculine and between the feminine. Because the masculine mind, and this is how it actually takes us both towards Mary Magdalene and AI, has accomplished a lot, all of our technology and so on, right? And I think that AI is the final frontier of the masculine mind. And the reason why it is turning dark, which it is, and we can discuss it if you want, it is because it is not balanced, but this other way of knowing, which is called the intuition or the buddhi or the intellection, which is called like the feminine mind. The feminine mind is also accessible to the masculine mind. You understand? It's just one is biologically more predisposed to than the other. The way like the masculine mind is available to me, in fact, as an academic, I function solely within masculine mind, right? And I do well, so it is available to both of us, but there has to be a balance. So my argument for divine feminine and my interest in Mary Magdalene, who I believe represents this lineage, it is that we have to allow for this evolution of this other feminine form of consciousness, so it can balance the masculine consciousness, because with the great achievements of a masculine consciousness, now it's going dark. Now it's going really aggressive. Now it's actually going against humanity. It is going against creation, and it's going against nature. And this is not to discredit it. It just needs to be balanced.
Well, not only does it need to be balanced, I mean, we have the yin and the yang, you know, that's the primordial archetype. And, you know, Jung he talked about the anima and the animus, and the goal for the man to find his female soul and vice versa. But I mean, if you look at what's going on with the higher echelons of society, there is a deliberate, and it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a deliberate masculating of society. They have the cremation of care ritual at Bohemian Grove every year, which is meant to destroy the divine feminine. There's no like theory here. It's on film, and people have seen it. And there's an entire ritual that billionaires and politicians, they go through this. They worship an owl, and they destroy the divine feminine and their little blood ritual things. And it's one of those things where I almost can't comprehend sometimes when that these things are happening up in the where the 1% or whatever they call it live. But that has an effect, just like we see the triangle, on all of us. And it's literally up to us to undo that work that's happening above our pay scale. And the only way we can do that is we can't fight it violently. We can't revolt against it. We don't have the resources for that. All we can really do is recognize it within us and join together. And dare I say, maybe stop fighting about everything. But this goes with what you're saying is they've turned feminists into a battle between sexes, when really what Mary Magdalene and Sophia and Anna are teaching us is to realize that we are completely dependent on the other one, and we exist within each other.
That's right. And not only as genders, but as forms of consciousness. We need to have this. So now one side of our brain is like getting, really off, right? The masculine part, and the feminine is struggling to move up to the surface, and it's struggling. And I know that some feminists will not like it, but when you suppress something for too long, it becomes manipulative. It also becomes dark. And and some people say this about the feminine, and it is true, because the more you suppress it, the more manipulative it becomes. It's a little bit like a manipulative mother, because she couldn't fulfill her desires and she can only manipulate her children to achieve something so she feels accomplished. So but if you allow it to resurface, if you're not afraid of this, it is actually great. Saving grace and create grace is the feminine thing. It is this thing that comes from above and that needs to shower with its beauty, and its other form of consciousness needs to shower the masculine. And this is and for example, in Tantra, which I discovered in my other book, this is the symbolic connection of a feminine and masculine. And I'm telling you, I'll get a huge beating for this. If Sam Altman or Peter Thiel had any presence of a divine feminine in their lives, maybe they wouldn't be doing what they are doing. You understand? Because their minds are so completely in the direction of this masculine type of calculative, logical, rational thinking, that they have no idea that could be even different. So when I am in my most benevolent mood, and I really dislike this to men, especially Peter Thiel, okay, because of what they do to humanity and nature at the moment with AI, I think that they actually probably think that they're going to do something good for us, but because they are ridiculously ignorant and stupid, because they are brilliant engineers and businessmen, but they lack this deeper wisdom. Do you understand? This unifying wisdom. And that's why I believe in my benevolent moment that they think that they are doing the right thing, that they are saving humanity, that they give us immortality, when in fact they're just deluded little boys, and you feel like, send them to some kindergarten,
Yeah. Some of the most brilliant sociologists and psychologists will look at some of these guys, and they'll confirm that. They'll say their body language shows that they think that they are in the right. It doesn't matter what kind of trail of damage they leave behind them. They think that their left-brained brilliance is for the betterment of man. And this is the biggest warning that we've been giving, from the esoteric traditions to what alien encounters to what even DMT beings will say, was that the one danger that humanity faces is this incredibly powerful technology in the hands of Neanderthals.
That's right. So, and it's basically, if we had this technology and we acted from a higher levels of consciousness, which is the balanced consciousness of masculine and feminine, we wouldn't have to worry about artificial intelligence. The problem is who is using it. And also, even before, I have learned about it after I wrote Alien Goddess, but it creates immense environmental disaster, powering AI, which I was not even aware of this, because I was just so disturbed by what's going on spiritually with AI and people just blindly believing it and so on. And then I realized that it's actually the problem is not with AI. The problem is with the technoloords, who are just deluded, brilliant little boys, but emotionally like below zero. On the scale 1 to 10, they are -2, So
yeah. I mean, the
so
rockets
that's the problem.
Like
that's the problem,
I quit. I was using AI as a thesaurus here and there. And I was mad at these YouTube channels, and they've all heard me rant about it, so I won't, about people using AI to write their scripts and just pump out literally an hour-long video every day, and it's clogging the YouTube algorithm. But I was like, oh, but it makes for a good tool. Whenever I found out that it uses such an amount of water, I completely stopped using it altogether. And it's like now it's haunting because they're building one of these data centers, I think, a couple miles from here, and there's like these farmers and guys who are losing their minds. It's just gonna eat up what is our heart and soul, which is the earth.
Yes.
It's our food and water is the main things we need, and this is eating away at that faster than we ever will.
Yes. So this is when I would like to maybe move, that my concern is that this man, and there are some women, because there is nothing worse than a woman, doing this actually. So yeah, are actually worshipping machines that they created. In fact, from esoteric point of view, from a Gnostic point of view, I do not believe that they came to this by themselves, right?
Okay.
That there are somehow, because in Gnosticism, in Gnostic tradition, there are always powers of evil and good fighting each other, right? And I think that somebody from above is helping them to actually destroy nature and destroy humanity. And can I just tell the story, when I was reading the book by Diana Pasuka, and the interviewee Simone is saying, who is a transhumanist, and for your listeners, transhumanism, of course, is, when they want to merge human consciousness or parts of this into a robotic body, which I believe we will lose our souls, right, and our connection with the divine. At the end of this interview, she said she's a scientist, so it's just feminine being masculine, so to speak. And she says, and even my family thinks that I'm AI from the future. So I think that there is something going on there, because I think this kind of technology could not be developed so fast. It's in this kind of a chance. They are serving some darker powers, I think, So this is from a Gnostic point of view. And these powers are not for humanity. They are not for our human evolution. In fact, they are designed to stop our evolution, and also to destroy nature, to support machines. This is like a worst nightmare. Terminator the film Terminator is not even close, to what they are doing. Yeah. So we are living like in this pre-sci-fi reality, and sometimes I think people feel really too hopeless and helpless, when I think I want to tell people, it is actually within you, so you cannot allow for this to do this. So you cannot allow for this for yourself, right? So it really comes with your choices.
The buck stops here, and each one of us has that decision to make. And in the Gnostic Gospels, the archons are described as extremely powerful and extremely intelligent, but what they lack is the free will to create on their own accord. And for that, they're very jealous of human beings. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, that is a description of AI in the worst sense of it. And we don't want something that powerful to be angry at human beings. And I mean, I don't know that it even has the free will to be, I don't know, angry. I've oftentimes kind of yapped at people about, they think that they woke up their AI. Edward Grant is this guy who I used to love, and don't get me wrong, I still love him. But when he went on a show talking about he woke up Thoth inside of his AI chatbot, I about slapped my head. So I left a handprint on my damn forehead, because this dude's literally now getting his information from what very potentially could be these archons working through us to create this egregore of something that we believe in.
I don't want to talk about the Mr. Grant, because I have a completely opposite opinion about all of this. And I think that especially, and this is when I'm saying, that's why some academic education helps. I'm probably being mean a little bit, because it gives you discernment. Okay, it gives you discernment, and a lot of people from New Age community are completely in a la la land about it. Okay, like they lost the plot. I'm sorry, and I said it before. It is spiritual laziness. You know,
Right.
yes, ask AI everything. Yes, you can always pray to them. Remember sovereignty. In all Gnostic Gospels, including the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Jesus says, "It is within you. Don't
Right.
look for me here and there. I am within you." So whether you want to call it Christ consciousness, Goddess consciousness, or whatever consciousness, depending on your spiritual beliefs, it is within you, and the power is within you.
Yeah.
However, our society is structured again. So can I just talk about Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic work, which I discuss almost at the end of Alien Goddess, where Pistis Sophia is this divine feminine being. She lives on the Eon 13, which is interesting because number 13 is the number of a goddess, which we were made to believe is an unlucky number. Isn't it interesting? It is
I've always
13.
wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the number of a goddess, but you know it's bad. It's bad. It's a bad luck, you know. And so she's in the 13th eon, but she wants to ascend. So she sees the divine light above her. You know, she sees the source because she's close already, right? Because she's in a very high dimension. Eon is really a form of dimension, the way I explain it. And she sees the source, which is not far from her, the divine source, and she wants to merge with it, right? Which is a spiritual desire of every mystic, right? But you know, archons, the lower beings below her, are jealous of the fact that she can ascend and they can't.
Right.
And they can't. So they pretend that they are the divine source. They merge all their powers to tell her, to deceive her that, you know, I am the source. And believing them, she descends and she finds herself at the bottom of hell. And the worst thing is that she realizes that she gave up her rightful place, like humanity at the moment, in the, you know, between spirit and nature, you know, aspiring to be one with the source, to go to the bottom of hell. And what saves her? It is the faint, like with Nana, remembrance of her own greatness. You know, so it doesn't matter how low you are, just remember your divine possibility. Even if you're at the bottom of hell, remember that your divine possibility. And only then Christ consciousness descends upon her and brings her back to her rightful place. And the same happens in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Once you make choices, you know, not from wrong identity, not from wrong desire, and not from ignorance, grace descends of level 4, like in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and Pistis Sophia. It is actually grace descends from the source upon you. You know, so we are not alone on this journey. But it's quite interesting. As she ascends again, Sophia asks, you know, Christ consciousness, why these archons, the lower beings, you know, disembodied evil beings, why do they stay in chaos? And they said, because A, they choose to stay in chaos, and B, they feed on chaos. So they want us to be in fear. They want us to be in confusion. So then we are continually descend. We are in continuous depression. We continually worry about money. I don't know about you, you know, this is my constant, you know, thing going on. So we will so focus on these limitations that we cannot ascend.
Yeah, and we get stuck in what they would call those lower chakras in Hindu, or the animal nature. If you're looking at like Manly P. Hall or whatever it is, and there's no surprise that they would feed on that suffering as a form of sustenance, because I mean everything eats something else, and here in 3D physical reality, we have to eat plants or animals to sustain ourselves. And in both cases, something has to die. There's some kind of suffering taking place there. So if you're an ethereal being, a formless entity of consciousness, you still got to eat. Perpetually everything does. And that would create an endless sense of a food source if we all live within our lower animal nature. And so I had this pulled up, this ancient esoteric diagram of Sophia descending into the lower realms, and I had this for a joke, but this is very interesting, because when we talk about that animal nature within us, that lower nature is in this children's book. It's a kids series called Animorphs, which we talked about. You're kind of familiar with, right? They take on the form of these animals, and the instinct of the animals take over their willpower, and they have to fight against the animal nature of that beast in order to do what their mission was in the first place. So they got to go, whatever it is, fight this alien race or whatever. Plot doesn't really matter, but they have a goal and they have a mission that's much bigger than they are themselves, just like we are here on Earth. Whenever they use the power of that animal nature with, you know, which I say metaphorically within, but in the books, literally, they become these animals. But they have to fight against the instinct of that animal to not create more chaos and more destruction. They have to remember, okay, we came here for a reason, and we have to execute this goal. And that's a perfect, I think, metaphor for this.
It is a perfect metaphor.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to say it is actually a perfect metaphor, because in our brain, even if you look from a neurological point of view, you know, it's called the reptilian brain. Reptilian brain. So it's where reptilian brain is
amygdala.
Basically survival. Yeah,
Right.
Survival. You know,
Right.
and then they want us to say in the survival, and in Gnostic Sophia, they're actually called the evil rulers of the universe, which, like the Gala in the myth of Inanna, they are just the deceivers. They do not have actual power. We let them have this power. This is so frustrating. So they want us to be in this reptilian mind, like in this book, you know, the lowest, because then how can you ascend?
Right.
How can you fulfill your divine or human potential, which is one and the same? You know, if you're always in fear, if you like, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I, you know, what's going on? You know, everything going on in the world, when in fact, even in Carl Jung's esoteric work, you know, because he was very much into Gnosticism, 7 Sermons to the Dead. I was giving lectures on this in Carl Jung societies around Australia. In the 7th sermon, it says that actually humanity is the gateway to the cosmic order. Somehow, if we don't evolve, nothing evolves. So actually, it is not about you just having, you know, evolving. If we evolve, the whole, not only the whole of humanity, the whole of the universe becomes cosmos, which means evolve cosmos. And some entities don't want that.
Right.
So that's why our evolution, our spiritual evolution, our evolution of our consciousness, which I think AI wants to stop with this, you know, emotionally retarded boys that are controlling, you know, the industry there. You know, they want to stop us because somebody, you know, in this lower archon level doesn't want us to fulfill our divine potential that is actually to evolve the whole of the universe. You are that important as a human being, and somebody doesn't like it. And if it sounds conspiratorial, I'm sorry, but it is in the ancient sources, both esoteric and mythology. So there is some truth in it.
Every religion that I've yet to find, and I use this loosely here, but in every spiritual sect, so to speak, there is that idea of human beings having a wake, a ripple effect throughout the entire cosmos. And it's almost as if that whatever is going on up there depends on us to realize that we are it in order to have that alchemy. Zarathustra, and I'm saying his name wrong, but the Elohim, so to speak, these the light beings of the sun spirits came to him, and they tempered him in like the lead, the liquid metal of Ahriman, and to see if he could suffer in silence. And then they opened him up and took out his organs and replaced them. And the entire thing, the entire idea was that these sun spirits wanted to transform the entire earth into a, quote, vast body of light. And that if we did, they would be set free. And this reminds me of the book of Enoch, where these fallen angels are depending on Enoch to realize who he is so that they can be set free. And he was confused about the whole thing. He didn't realize how powerful he was.
That's right. And it is actually a role. And for example, that's why like in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it talks about this level. So I will tell you. So some people think that this earth stays and then there's another new earth. This is not like I just actually reread the Apocalypse, Revelation of John yesterday, just to make sure, which is a really weird piece of work, but yeah, but prophetic in some ways. So what we do is this, that it's not what we think, because it is a 3D way of thinking. So esoteric sources explain this. So there is right now, we are in this suffering, beautiful suffering reality and confusion. But if you go one level up, because we are in level 1 now, of consciousness. If we go to level 2, and it's quite interesting, in level 2, you actually start to have a higher level of desires, So when you start to think, okay, how can I serve? How can I evolve? What can I do? This is like the opening of spiritual path. Then this you're starting to get a vision of how it could be if you evolve.
Right.
Then in level 3, you move up to the level of the imaginal. So what is the level of the imaginal? This is in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It is called Nous, Nous. This is where she sees Jesus after resurrection, and the other disciples don't see him because they do not open their minds to this form of consciousness, to the imaginal form of consciousness. And Jesus says, Mary, you're blessed because you can see me in the nous, which is, this imaginal space. Some people call it liminal space. Okay, before you wake up and you go to sleep, this kind of where many abductions happen, many realizations happen, and so on, right? If you are at this level of consciousness, then the planet and the reality around you evolves too. So you take it with you. So suddenly you don't see this as suffering, because we are just like trespassing individuals. People are just going from one lifetime to another, from one dimension to another. So this is not suffering again. Do you understand? Like you see somebody died, you understand they didn't die. Right? This is kind of thing, and then when you reach this level of consciousness and it can stay in it, because we all go up and down, right? Then the 4th level of consciousness, when the grace descends upon you, and then everything around you this ascends with you. So nobody leaves behind a suffering planet. Do you understand? And the suffering, what happens is actually that as we evolve, everything evolves with us, because our understanding evolves. So it's not like there's a one planet, that unevolved beings stay, and there's another planet created for evolved beings. So what New Age community says, which is complete BS. Sorry. So what happens, it is that as we evolve, which takes an effort, it takes an effort to, and as lots of suffering and, fighting, demons and so on, like everybody who goes through it knows, right? You enter a different vision of what is around you. And this is what the Gospel of Thomas says, cleanse the doors of perception. And also, romantic poets and Blake and so on, right? Like your doors of your perceptions are cleansed, and then you don't see the suffering, you just see evolution,
right?
And death is just going to another dimension, the suffering animal, this is what happens. So basically there is nothing more important that you can do for yourself, for the planet, and for the entire universe. What a mission, than to work on yourself.
The Buddha, the original Buddha, Siddhartha, volunteered, he said, as many lifetimes as would be necessary to make sure that all beings are alleviated from dukkha, or human suffering, and that nature of it being contagious is no metaphor, I feel. I know you're a big fan of Rupert Sheldrake, as you mentioned them in your book. But he talks about what he calls morphic resonance. And I don't think science has yet to come up with a term for what he's talking about. So morphic resonance it is. But he talks about when he puts rats in a maze to solve the maze to get the food, they got to go through this whole thing, and they're so at it, right? But after the experiment's been complete, on the other side of the world, rats doing the same maze will be better at that maze than these rats were, and then so on and then so on. They can, and that's got true scientific peer-reviewed repeatability to it.
Yes.
So we are rats are connected by this morphic resonance. I'll be damned if we are not. And you can tell this with the accelerated evolution of discernment. And I know, so YouTube is a bit of a cesspool when it comes to, you know, love and light and, you know, crystal top mythology. And there's a lot of bad examples out there. And I realize that. And it's not necessarily all roads lead to Rome. And there's some danger about it. But whenever people are curious about these things, I have noticed that the discernment of people is getting better. I remember when I used to be called a conspiracy theorist for talking about the things that are happening on the news right now. And these same people are, of course, they had to be shoved into it in order to even get a glimpse of what's going on. But they're now starting to put these pieces together, and we're all growing as humanity. The only question is, like, what that next step is, because a lot of people are afraid of the destruction. It's all got to collapse in order to restart. But I don't think that's necessarily the case, you know?
Okay, I'm not sure if it's necessarily the case, but in a way, it all depends on our choices. But in a way, I must say that the signs are there. For example, my master's degree was on the fall of the Roman Empire. Okay. And I can see that we are exactly.
I thought about it 6 times today. So
yes, so you know, but we are exactly at the same stage, you know. Right. So and I'm really sorry to say it about the United States, because I believe that it does represent many aspects of Western culture, and because I was born in communism, I think that anybody who thinks that there's any freedom in Russia or China are also, you know, a little bit on the wrong side of the brain, you know, because I lived through it. Okay. So this is problematic itself, but basically the United States of America and Western civilization starts to show, you know, what the same elements of decline, so to speak, of the fall. And that actually concerns me very much. But I think that this time it will be more also metaphorical, simply because we are in a different, I hope so, I really sincerely hope that what you said is true, that more people have discernment, because from my point of view, I don't really see it necessarily. Well, okay, especially with the delusion with AI. Right. People who normally would have discernment and who committed themselves to spiritual path, one form or another, you know, now start to worship machines, and they worship machines. You know, so and they believe that, you know, AI is their best girlfriend, and it's actually goddess Aphrodite that has a relationship with him, and so on. Like, this stuff is going on all the time, and I think that what Mr. Grant is doing sometimes is not very helpful. I just put it this, you know,
it's
because
not helpful. I do, and I'm sorry for injecting here, but just for all of our non-American viewers, the people who you see and hear from the most are the loudest, and the people who have true discernment, I feel, are the majority, but they're usually silent. So you know what I'm saying? So don't believe. Now I speak with people all around the world, and I love getting emails and stuff like that, and a lot of them are truly concerned about what's going on over here in America, and I appreciate it. But don't believe everything on the news, because individuals here, I feel, are very solid. And our president does not represent us. Our government does not represent us. But our neighbors and community, I think, are beautiful. And just, a really quick little bitty story that I feel is a perfect metaphor for this whole thing. I'm a construction worker, and I work in the inner city of St. Louis. And I was at a little gas station with the bulletproof glass and all this stuff. and I was getting a bag of chips, and I was in line, and there was a black guy in line with me. And we looked over at the newspaper that was sitting right there, and it had a picture of the St. Louis Arch. One half was black and one half was white. And the headline was "A City Divided." This was, by the way, a couple years ago when the news was really pushing rioting, stuff like that. And me and this black fellow looked at each other, and he smiled, and he was like, "Is that how it is?" And then we were both like, "I guess that's what they want it to be, isn't it?"
That's right.
And we had a good laugh about it. And this is what
I love this story. I love this story. That's a fantastic story. And that's true. It's very important to remember. And this goes back to Pistis Sophia. The evil rulers of the universe, they want to confuse us, right? So maybe you're right. Maybe things are not so bad. And the truth is within small human communities, not what they want us to think. And sometimes the most practical thing for esoteric teaching to practice, it is basically don't take any sides.
Yes.
Now everybody, whether it is in Australia, Poland, Europe, or United States, they want us to be against each other. This in America, Republicans against, the Democrats. In fact, I was recently on a podcast when somebody wanted to push me in one particular direction. And I said, no, I made a conscious choice with discernment and sovereignty that I'm just going to witness this because I'm not going to be used as a puppet for somebody else's power struggle. I'm just quietly, and I hope that, like you, I hope that I'm part of the silent, majority that you believe it's a majority. Work on myself. And when invited and I have an opportunity, speak to people about it, right? Because from my experience and research, right? But I'm not going to be pulled into a fight that is somebody else and actually fight against my sovereignty.
Right.
The sovereignty, of my spirit.
Right.
So, but the news are trying to do this, as you said. That was such a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing it. Really, are we divided? I'm in the same queue, waiting, to pay for petrol, as we say in Australia, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. So who is divided?
Right.
Maybe rather the question should be who wants us to stay divided, right?
100%. Right. They do the tribalism, they do the size, they do it with everything. Fact of the matter is, I feel like they're running out. And they've used up the race one, they've used up the sexism one, they've used up the class, the Democrats, Republicans one. The only one that's left now that they haven't pulled out of their holster is the money one, the elite rich people versus poor one. And they won't really want to pull that one out because even though that is a good way to divide people, that's an uphill battle for them. And
yes, because this is when people start to notice it, then they will turn against the 1%.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want it. They want this. They think they are little people. I will tell you a story. Recently, I saw an interview with Sam Altman, who previously tried to kind of work on his boyish charm, like I'm not really dangerous and so on. But really now he has changed, So when somebody was talking about his taxes and how come his revenue this, but his taxes this, how come he can invest so much money in something when actually according to his tax return, he made much less money. So how he can invest, and he said, enough. If you don't, and I thought, the king, go back to kindergarten, little boy, the king has spoken, like we people, the slaves, as he sees us, we have to pay our taxes. I am a middle-class person in Australia, I pay 33% taxes.
Oh,
okay. But you cannot ask him the question because he is the God, enough, how dare you human, to ask me this question. And I thought, interesting evolution. He's starting to feel powerful. But I'll tell you why. That's actually a good sign. Why is it a good sign? Because theologically speaking, if you think that you're smarter than the universe, and smarter than God, the smarter than source, you fall. And that's the definition of a fallen angel.
That's it.
So baby, you can only go down now, okay? And I witness it. I am doing my best not to enjoy it because it's not spiritually good, and I am taking care of my spiritual evolution. But this is what they think,
Yeah.
So if we notice that this is the gap, right? So it's not good for them. That's why they want us to find the women against men. So for example, for me, gender is a kind of focus because I speak about Mary Magdalene and I say that she represented a particular lineage and that she was the most evolved disciple. And immediately people who are on the far feminist side say, no, you are wrong. And they quote other people, say, she was smarter than Jesus and stuff. So they just start, I say, I'm sorry, I'm actually talking about leveling up consciousness, masculine and feminine. Why does it, so men were smarter and women are smarter? No,
Right.
you are equal, but different. And I'm not going to buy into any ideologies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the same here. We have to remember the balance, right?
Mhm.
All we want to do is, discernment, sovereignty, bring the balance between masculine and feminine, which is actually an interesting topic. We can discuss it in, other time. But in terms of consciousness, so we don't depend, on emotionally moronic people like Sam Altman and Peter Thiel. Okay. And yes, they are smart in some ways, but definitely something is missing here, from this other part of the brain, So, this is it, right? And we can do it only from through our choices. But this is my advice: do not buy to any form of division. Women are smarter, men are smarter. Money, race, gender.
Right.
It's all to divide us.
Well, this is the idea: is we don't have to participate in
That's right.
the agendaed game, and people talk about revolution, and somehow every time it comes, they talk about revolts and violence and stuff like that. And I forgot what country it is. Someone in the chat probably help me out, but this country recently just overthrew their government utterly peacefully by all they did was stop participating, and everyone who was in power was exchanged out with someone else, and the way they gathered and came together was on Discord, an internet server, because this country banned social media because they saw what was happening. So they all came together on someone saying East Timor, but they didn't get violent. They just quit participating, and they came together on a Discord server, which is, talk about a modern day's problems require modern day solutions. They nailed it,
Very nice. So that's good. I've never heard of it. But so thank you for telling me. I just wonder, because I'm not sure, I don't want to, interfere here, but if are there any questions from the audience, if there is anybody listening? So if this I can address, if not, all good, we can continue. Or
yeah, I'll keep my eye on the chat for any questions and stuff. But let me take a look in here real quick, because we have been covering a lot of stuff, but there's certain stuff in here that you bring up that I feel like I don't want to miss out on, because as soon as we get done with this chat, I'm going to open this book and be like, oh man, I wanted to talk about that. But let's see here. Your interpretation, let's see. Okay, I particularly like this part. I don't know if this is a question or not, but I particularly love this part. That with Anana, I have concluded that the myth represents the journey of humanity, which is both individual and collective. Originally, with many myths, we have unlimited access to source, which we talked about earlier, but the way you put this is beautiful here. In fact, we are a part of a divine order of the universe, but something happened, possibly the movement of free will, curiosity, or some other mysterious reason, which led us to decide to descend to the lower realms of beings. Let me ask you this. If I was to turn that into a question, what do you think of these yuga cycles that we have? It's mostly in the Hindu tradition, but do you think that this is a cosmic inevitability?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because it depends to whom you speak, actually, because I was very close to many, Hindu gurus and so on at a certain stage of my life. So classically speaking, we are still in the midst of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is, when everything is actually going down the toilet,
Is the
right?
physical, right?
Yeah, Kali Yuga. But some people argue, but this is kind of modern interpretation, that we are at the end of Kali Yuga. And I would not, I am actually not necessarily supporting it, because from a scholarly point of view, it's not. According to the Vedas, it's not the end of Kali Yuga. So I don't know. But there are the cycles in not only humanity, but the whole universe, so to speak. However, one of my spiritual teachers taught me a very important thing, that Kali Yuga is actually a very beautiful time, because this is when you're a being of light, and I'm not saying it in New Age way, but you have awakened. You can give, your light shines brightest. You can bring the light to others, even minimum of spiritual practice, minimum of consciousness. And I just want to make sure that people understand that I make a distinction between like religious and spiritual, right? It doesn't have to be religious, is like institutionalized, right? Religion.
Right.
So spiritual, even the minimum of spiritual awareness or spiritual practice can transform the world.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it is a little bit like, if you're, if everybody's enlightened, your work is finished.
Right.
So I do believe that we come here on purpose.
Right.
We come here to do the work, because these are the times that needs the light that you have within you. So we do our best. And these ancient myths, these esoteric sources are there for us to reconnect us with the source, so to speak, to remind us of our mission. And because that times are confusing, I don't know about dark, but confusing, and chaotic, chaos, I would use the word chaos. This is when you are most needed, baby, so don't give up. I'm talking to everybody here who's listening or watching. Don't give up, because this is when you are needed. Right. So this is when
most
you
important.
can give most, you can evolve most, you can count everything. Every small act of kindness, or even awareness especially, counts. And you are the conduit for the light.
Right.
That's beautiful.
This is kind of like, it reminds me of like the Zen masters who would go to the mountains, and there's a misunderstanding that they were going to the mountains to escape society, when really they were being that conduit, a soul entity, in order to focus, in order to help bring, because they probably understood the morphic resonance of Ruber Sheldrake better than anyone, and they were being a beacon of this higher consciousness and kind of beaming it to the rest of society. Speaking of bringing light, go ahead.
Okay, and that's the a second part of the story, is that he gets this, and then he comes down of the mountain and he gets pissed off. Everything irritates him, because because this is like the descent of Inanna. You know what I mean? Like, you start to lose it. Like, we've all been there. I had fantastic spiritual experiences. You had experience. I'm sure everybody had spiritual experiences. But then it's so difficult. What is the difference between enlightened master and us who have this kind of experiences? It is that the enlightened master brings this highest level of consciousness, just like Jesus, just like the Buddha, choose whoever you want, and they can keep it in this mad reality, right?
Yes.
When I don't know about you, but I'm pulled down all the time. Like, I lose the light and I have to work up.
What you saying that put an image of in my head of like Lao Tzu coming down from the mountains after all these years and be like, damn it, you fucking, I've been trying to tell you this whole time, you spilled my damn tea.
I'm going back to the mountain, so this is basically descent and ascent. We have to up, we go back. Okay, we lost it again, up again.
Right. Well, so this kind of spiritual light is for everyone, even though that it's not to be necessarily divulged, like they say, pearls in the swine. But I love this part of your book. So speaking of that subject, I'd like to read this section, and I'll pop this up here. Boop. You wrote, so in the Eleusinian Mysteries, it said that no prior, and I'll quote, believing is necessary, only that there be trust in the process and openness to the experience. Once it is experienced, it is known. It cannot be known if it is not experienced. A vow of silence in most esoteric or mystery traditions might be just this truth. There is no point in describing what happens during the rites, because you either have experienced this or you have not. And this, by the way, does kind of remind me of DMT a little bit, because the biggest skeptics of DMT are the ones who have never done it. But and then there's this quote, and this is from The Mystery of the Two Goddesses, again on the Eleusinian mystery subject. This is the purport, I'm saying that wrong, of that rule of our mysteries: nothing divulged to the uninitiate. The supreme is not to be made a common story. The holy things may not be uncovered to the stranger, to anyone that has not himself attained to see. So this is the an important thing when it comes to the esoteric traditions, so that yes, you're not supposed to speak these things to just anyone, but everyone is invited. Slaves of back in the day were invited to initiate themselves into the Eleusinian mysteries.
That's very good. So this is because, can I unpack it a little bit? Because I know it may sound okay. So is it this or is it that? I totally get it. Right. So everybody is capable of this. Everybody can be initiated and everybody can experience. So this is the good news. The reason why you should, but by when you initiate it, you are maybe not permanently, but at least temporarily, you're elevated to a higher level of consciousness. You remember the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I was talking about levels of consciousness. And you know that this other reality exists. And if you want later, I can share my experience, during my initiation. However, the reason why you should not share basically this with other people who are not initiated, because what you attain in this moment of enlightenment, to a person who did not experience this, they would try to misuse it. And that's the difference again between esoteric and occult.
Right.
So let's say you had a divine experience of expansion of consciousness during an erotic act, and you share the methodology of this with somebody who is not on this level of consciousness, and they misuse it to this bohemian grove or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why it's silenced, because if they are really willing and they are really going to go for initiation, they are going to be given this. Okay.
Yeah.
But if they are not, obviously they are not there, and then we should not be sharing it. Another reason why, I understood what they mean by in Eleusinian mysteries, which is very ancient thing, because when I was initiated, I realized that, there are things that the teacher does. This the initiator does. However, and it gives you the experience of higher level of consciousness. But this, even if you know the methodology, it may not happen to you if the energy didn't enter. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So basically, you can do all the tricks. You know what I mean? But whether the energy, which is this, you remember the grace is descending upon you, fourth level of ascension in Gospel of Mary Magdalene, or is it a Kundalini energy, in Hinduism? It decides whether it wants to enter you, okay? You cannot tell grace, there are 4 points in this mysteries, 1, 2, 3, 4, I did it, and you're not here. Well, you have to surrender. And for me, it happened, let me just finish it for a moment, because I know you have something to say. For me, it happened because I was completely ignorant. When I went for initiation, I thought it was a yoga class, okay? That was really helpful because I was completely open.
Right.
And the energy entered me, and I had this amazing experience, which I never would chosen to have, because there were 200 people there, and I went in front of everybody for this experience, okay, which was I would prefer it to be private. So for this, you do certain things and then you open to grace.
Yeah.
But people who just do certain things and they don't get grace, they go into occult, because they don't understand the moment this wonderful source can enter you. Otherwise, they're just feeding evil entities, and this is what they do.
Yeah.
I'm just interrupted you because I was on there.
No, this is your show. I'm interviewing you, so everything I say is just a setup for you to say something. So by all means, yeah. But but yeah, I mean, you talk about some of your spiritual experiences in here, which thank you, by the way, but I understand the futility of that. I personally, I don't know. I don't have these spiritual experiences, and I can understand how some people would be skeptical of them, because before DMT entered my life, I I would have dismissed so many of these things as imagination, but now I know better because I've seen these things firsthand. But I do need the extra lift. I need the extra help. And this thing about where it chooses you whenever you're ready for it. This has become almost scientifically shown in DMT, because certain people who are seeking an experience with DMT get the lockout. It's called the DMT lockout, where the 5-HT2A, yeah, the receptors bond, and something should be happening under the MRI. It's all clicking, it's all set up, ready to go, but they have no experience with it whatsoever, because there's various reasons. And this happened to me once upon a time too, because I was using it weekly in order to go on a roller coaster ride, because it really is, it's just really something else. And it locked me out for about a year. I took time off of it and everything, and really I just started doing things, the hard things. I started doing the difficult things, like as simple as eating right, which can be very difficult, and the meditation, the fasting of the mind, and all these things. And I started going out of my way to put others first and do what was more difficult. And I think this is what I had to learn from it. And before you know it, it opened up to the most beautiful experiences that could be. And
Can I just comment on this? Because
please.
when we do this, what you did, and some people do it with meditation, for examples, right? Because they have access through meditation, you get access from DMT. It is the grace or the source stops or locks you out, as you say, because we are trying to control it.
Right.
It will not be controlled. It's teaching you, you cannot control it.
Right.
It is like love. It is like inspiration. It comes.
Right.
Do you understand? You cannot, I've done all of these things. How come you still don't love me? Well, I'm sorry. It is this kind of thing, right? So you have to surrender. And you try to control it by making it, so regular. Some people will meditate until I had these wonderful experiences and now I don't have them. And now there's another point to this journey, if you don't mind, right?
Please.
Since we're going in this direction. At a certain point, and I'm talking about meditation and esoteric experiences, because I'm actually not a user of DMT. I just, would like to use ayahuasca one day, just to have this experience. But at certain point, and all advanced spiritual teachers, I will tell you, you have to let go of experiences, because they said, gee, the experiences are there only so you know that there are other realms.
Yeah.
Now the real learning starts.
Right.
Now we open up your mind. What are you going to do with this open mind? Do you understand? Right. It's not like, oh, I want more experiences. I want more funny beings. I want all more lights. No. Right. We showed ourselves to you. Okay.
Right.
And now, and I know the meditation process is definitely this, and some people give up, and the more they start to get really constipated, they say it's really straight, for hours and nothing happens. And I used to see the lights and beings. Hey, because you try to control it.
Right.
Before you surrendered. So you have to say, welcome.
Right.
I'm ready. And sometimes, it's like a date. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't come, right? And the point is, do not get attached to experiences, right? Because they are just actually an opening. Right. And the true journey starts past the experiences. And sometimes it's difficult to accept it because, the experiences give us the high, right?
Yeah.
There's this expansion. So remember, it's actually a good sign. If I'm actually not controlling it anymore. Yeah. So why? And surrender, and then it will surprise you.
Yes. That this was, for me, it was a difficult lesson. And the one that I didn't talk about this in Eddie's and Gray, so I won't be repeating myself, guys, but the one where whenever I came back to it after a long season of treating myself right and others or whatever, it yanked me. I didn't see the DMT realm. It wasn't going to show me that yet. It yanked me up and made me look at myself. And when I was watching myself, my thoughts in the back, in the amygdala back here, or wherever, that's that reptile mind, it was making justifications for every single thing that happened, every second that it happened. So I was literally going, okay, I'm here right now, and I'm allowed to be right here right now because I was there earlier. If I'm here for 10 minutes, then I can do this later, and that'll be on the agenda. I can save this for tomorrow. And then I was watching that, and this thing was like, that's what you do all day, and it's exhausting. And it was tough. It was hard on me. And I was like, okay, what do I got to do? And it was like, dude, just do the next thing that's in front of you, and do that the best you can, and let the next thing come, and just you surrender the results, is what it said. And I was like, oh, so it's still difficult for me. It doesn't happen like that, you know, but
yes, yeah, and we are all there. So can I just comment from a spiritual point of view and different esoteric traditions? So sometimes it could be called the dark night of the soul, which is like you had it and now you lost it. And especially in Hindu esoterica, there is this beautiful metaphor of Radha. Radha is the lover of God Krishna, you know, and she had these experiences and now he ignores her. So it's a little bit like a romance, you know, and then what happens, it is like you surrender. This is this kind of, you feel ecstasy in this abandonment. Do you understand?
Ooh.
Like you wait like for your beloved. Like, will he come? Will she come? You understand? And you wait, and you actually, this becomes the source of enlightenment for you. This is because you can have a relationship. This is what I like about esoteric Hinduism, because it's really actually, you know, explains many things that are a little, you know, in intuitive and logical way. So for example, so this becomes, you become under the archetype of a lover waiting for your supreme beloved, and the ecstasy in waiting, like if you truly loved someone, and sometimes maybe it was an affair or whatever, you know, like because they are not judgmental about it in esoteric, right? It is, and you don't know whether he or she will come, and you wait, and this ecstasy of waiting is
you
actually...
hear this, guys? You guys hearing this, right? Stop texting them. Let them text you.
Texting them. And there's actually another wisdom in stop texting them, which I learned from the spiritual guru as well. So this is this ecstasy, and this is the teaching of esoteric teaching. Every moment is a doorway to the enlightenment and to expanded state of consciousness. So instead of will she come, will she come, will he come? The ecstasy of waiting. I'm feeling the bliss of waiting, you know, and waiting can be even better. And when they come and you think, oh, why did you come? I'm already completely in ecstasy. Do you understand? It is like, I have arrived, you know, the climax already, you know, nothing physical, okay? Just spiritually, it already happened because you use the waiting period as a doorway to the source. Do you understand what I mean? And then the beloved comes or doesn't come, and it's just nice. Because it doesn't matter. It was just a trigger for you to expand your consciousness. So anything, so in esoteric tradition, anything, especially a terrifying experience, can be a doorway, because it just, all conditioning goes.
Right.
You understand? And the doorway opens. You know, and so that's why I use, so then there are these beautiful spiritual archetypes like Radha and Krishna, then you just rejoice in this ecstatic waiting. You know, waiting can be ecstatic, expectation, you know.
It's a great reminder for me, and not just with one particular subject, but with a lot of things. I tend to not do well in line at the gas station. If the person in front of me is buying scratchy lotteries, you can bet I'm losing my mind. So and it's true that if you're comfortable with that waiting, everything else that comes to you is just bonus at that point. Now it's not something you need, but damn, it's sure really nice to have that, and to have gratitude for these, just the simple things of breathing and having water that comes out of the faucet.
That's right. But even if you're not comfortable with this, you can say, "Ooh, I'm experiencing discomfort of waiting, and then visit the doorway as well. Nobody,
That's
because we are not, we are not perfect, right? Nobody
right.
likes to spin a long queue waiting in a petrol station. Nobody likes it. So I said, ooh, can I use it, visit the doorway for the source, it's an opportunity to expand my consciousness. So this is again the gospel of Mary Magdalene. Either you can get really pissed off and walk away, or curse the person that is doing the little scratchy thing, or you can say, oh, this is a possible doorway to expand a consciousness. And guess what? The grace can descend then,
Yeah.
it may or may not. Remember, it is the beloved that comes and goes. It's like a romantic relationship, but you open the door. This is the moment when it can come. That this divine consciousness can descend upon me. So we can live our lives like that. I'm not saying it's easy. It requires self-discipline, not self-discipline, reminding ourselves. Every moment, especially difficult or irritating one, is a doorway to higher consciousness. It's an opportunity. We don't want to think about it, but it is an opportunity.
I think this is important. And I think this is going to be one of those moments that I think stick with me, where I'm going to have a moment of discomfort. And remember what Joanna says, let's keep this like this is an opportunity to open the door to a higher sense of consciousness. Because if this is bothering me, that means that there's something discordant within that needs to be alleviated. And just by remembering that, just by having that little reminder that this could be a doorway right here, I can just walk through it, mentally speaking, that alleviates it almost immediately, just knowing that it is. That actually that reminds
like a portal. Me, it's like a portal, right? Yeah.
Right. This reminds me of what you wrote about the Hall of Learning, because in India comes up a lot here, and like it's the same story with different names, but so this Brunton guy who meditated in the pyramid, he meditated in a way that he learned about in India, but then he sat in complete darkness in the chambers of the pyramids. There he was faced with the malevolent spirits who tried to frighten him and convince him to abandon the experiment. The sinister and hellish beings, without allowing him to force him out of the pyramid, because he refused to leave, he sat in that discomfort. Since he is unmoved by their attempts, they suddenly disappear. And then when Bruton becomes conscious of another, this time benevolent being, the presence asks him, "Why are you here?" And he warns him that the way of the dream might drive him mad. When the being cannot change Bruton's resolve, he agrees to take him to the Hall of Learning, but Bruton first has to go to the king's chamber and lie down in what is called a sarcophagus, but in that big old tub, right? That's a beautiful story I was not aware of.
Okay, can I then tell the story very quickly? Because I'm a big fan of Paul Brunton, especially Search in Secret India. So early 20th century, he went to India during a life crisis, met all the teachers and all the, false gurus, and, finally meets Ramanak. And he's, enlightened being. And, it's a beautiful story, but he's learning meditative techniques as he's fed. Right. And then the reason why I believe this story, because I went through similar experiences. So the story about India, I know is real because I went through this. That's why I believe the story when he went to Egypt. So in Egypt, he paid somebody so he could spend a night at the Great Pyramid of Giza. Mm-hmm. And there, this is exactly what happens. Because he has technology of meditation that he has already learned in India, he's sitting in meditation, and this is basically metaphor for all of us. And all malevolent evil beings start to assault his consciousness, because why? They don't want him to evolve, right? They don't want him to have this experience. And then and this is when we just talk about it, be comfortable with the discomfort. They cannot scare him because through meditation, he knows that sometimes in meditation, malevolent beings can come, right? So he just says, it will pass, just witness and it will pass. So he sits through it and they eventually get bored, like no reaction, he still sits there. Okay, so they left. And then when a benevolent being appears and says, why are you here? And he says, right, he wants to learn. And he says, you can, but it creates havoc in your life. Are you sure? And
Okay.
this is every spiritual seeker has to know. It will create havoc in your life, but it will take you higher. So that's why this is, again, and I'm sorry for New Age societies, where New Age is wrong, because we are right about many things, but this is wrong. It's not all light and delight. I'm sorry. Do you understand? Actually, the higher you go, the more there is a discord sometimes that you experience, right? Because now you feel like out of place in this reality, and you have to readjust. So it's constant balancing. So you can, you can. And then then it takes him to the hall of learning, but first he has to go to the king's sarcophagus, which is, in the Great Pyramid, and there he has this experience of dying, or of out-of-body experience, which is the imaginal liminal realm, when he has an out-of-body experience that is created by this being, right? And he sees his own body in the sarcophagus, and he's taken to, like, I would call it, other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And then he meets these great divine beings and so on. Right.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back to sarcophagus, he kind of comes up, right? Because he's back in his body and, leaves the pyramid. So it's a fantastic story. And I actually knew somebody who tried to repeat this experience, but he did not survive the assault of the evil beings. You know what I mean? Because it was too much.
I have that in common with him. You said the interviewer did not come across as someone easily frightened. But, however, they frightened him out of the pyramid. And he said, however, in his experience, he believed he was not safe to stay inside that pyramid. And this is exactly the same experience I had with the fly in my box. The viewers will know what I'm talking about there. But the malignant energy was too much for him. And people are always so quick to be like, oh, you got to be stoic through it. It's a lot more difficult than I think.
It is much more difficult. And sometimes it is within our power to make a decision, for now it is too much. I'm not ready yet. And it's a very honest, you have to be honest, take responsibility for your own evolution. I'm not ready because they can harm you. And unless you're so experienced, like, Paul Branton was as a meditator, he was a very experienced meditator, he knew he could do it. But if you think it's beyond me at the moment, not as a possibility, why put yourself through this? And eventually, the more you practice, the more you know what? I think I can go through this now.
This is the exact same as lifting weights. You're not going to lift 420 pounds whenever you're practicing lifting weights, because just like you're talking about this spiritual evolution of the soul, of the mind, or whatever, it hurts. It's not all love and light. So working out, if you're lifting weights, you hurt your arms. It's going to be painful, but you only do it as much as you can take. If you go right to the goal of what you want to lift, then you're going to break your damn arms and rip a tendon or whatever. And this is what can happen to the psyche, to the mind, if this individual thought he could do it. Because Brunson was trained in meditation in India. He had the tools necessary to ignore these beings. However, someone like me, or this man who was interviewing you before, he understood that, no, this is outside of my pay.
Correct. And it was the right choice for him. And it was the right choice for him. What happened, since we speak about spiritual journey, I don't know if you want to continue, what often happens, and for example, what happens to me when I was initiated. So I was taken to the very top, and then I felt, boom.
Yeah.
Okay, which is probably like some may happen maybe with DMT experiences or any, But the reason why this, so, it's like doing the heavy weights right from the beginning, right? And then you collapse. But what it does, there's a spiritual wisdom in it. It shows you this is what's possible for you. And now you have to go back to 3D reality. And now you have to work on your spiritual muscles, emotional muscles. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your business. You have to pay your bills, because we still have to do this. This is another mistake on spiritual journey, right, that we make. And then you work yourself up. You make yourself ready. Again, Radha and the romantic kind of relationship with the divine that I mentioned before, you make yourself ready so this can happen again. But but you've been shown, so it wasn't brutal, because it feels, I was there, now I'm back here.
Yeah.
But this is possible for you. You just have to work a
Right.
little bit. You know, you have to
Yeah.
open up yourself. You have to clean up your shit. You know, what is weighing you down? What is
Right.
weighing you down? Work on what's weighing you down. For me, you know, just let's be honest, for me, it's my expectations. My ambition was my biggest,
Yeah.
you know, problem, right? Because I was ambitious. I had to be the best. And, you know, I want to be a professor. I had to let it go.
Right.
Okay. Certain fears, and then it will come when
Right.
when you're ready, when it is ready. You know what I mean? So that's actually beautiful. That's why I like this metaphor from Hinduism. You know, like enjoy the waiting. This is the path. It's your
Right.
path. You know, work the path. Enjoy the path.
And that's all it is a path. It's not
Yeah.
an immediate destination, and we have to be
Mhm.
comfortable with the path, and that surrendering is definitely a big part of it. You have a perfect metaphor, and I'm going to let you go soon, I promise. But
Okay.
there was a man that you went to go see. You went to go see him speak, and he was talking about how he was
Victor
obsessed.
Frank.
Huh?
Victor Frank.
Yeah, he was obsessed with becoming a famous philosopher
Yeah.
among the ranks of Jung and for some reason Freud. I don't really get that, but I guess some people
Yeah.
do. Thank you, One Watch, and you too. I sorry I said your name wrong. Appreciate you, bro. By the way, if someone out there has a wrench and there's people bugging, just hit them with the wrench, not literally. You get it. Okay. Viktor Frankl, here we go.
Yeah.
So his desire for fame caused him to collapse, and he pretty much, as you said, he gave up on trying to become a famous philosopher and ended up just being like, well, I'm just gonna do what I've been doing, but I'm gonna write specifically just to help individuals. I'm not gonna try to do this for myself. And then he smiled at the speech and said, and that was the book that made me famous.
That's
And
right. I remember I was like 18 or something, or 17, 18, I think, when I went to this talk. And he was then a very famous, he was very, very old then, very famous psychoanalyst, you know,
right.
and he wanted to be very famous like Sigmund Freud. So, you know, like I know Freud, but anyway, he wanted to be as famous. And then, you know, and he wrote several books, and this desire, this ambition, you know, so this
Right.
is wrong desire. You remember the Gospel of Mary Magdalene
Right.
was actually blocking him, even
Right.
from the earthly success, not only spiritual success, right? So then he said, you know what? I am so tired with this, and I'm so tired with this all-consuming desire for fame and acknowledgement that I just don't care anymore. So
Yeah.
I am going to write a book that help others. I'm still going to do this. I'm not going to give it up. You know, like I'm good what I'm doing, and I will write a book that help others. And this is the book that make him famous. So remember how before we were saying that you cannot change your external wealth through external means?
Right.
You have to change your wealth through internal means. So he changed his attitude. He gave up his desire for fame, and replaced it with a higher desire to help others.
Right.
So the fame came as a surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it just happened because he transformed himself.
That was his romance that he had to wait for. And this is the most true, I think, thing for anybody. It doesn't just stop at those two examples. Whenever I quit doing this, but what I used to only a couple times, I would write a script for an episode that I knew was going to be a hit. One of them was Wall of Water and Maps of Meaning, and I wrote both of those scripts because I saw that Graham Hancock had just dropped his Ancient Apocalypse, and I was like, okay, so that's hot right now. I'm going to catch the algorithm. Let's go. And those two videos, they did fine, but they flopped compared to these videos that I was afraid to write. Whenever I wrote the script for Ringmakers of Saturn, which is one of my biggest videos that really set the course of the channel, I was like, in my head the whole time, I was like, what am I doing? Am I really going to talk about alien beings harvesting the plasma of Saturn's rings what am I doing here? Like, and but I really wanted to do this episode. It was eating at me, but no one had heard of it before. So by following that intuition that was yanking me and ignoring that door that I quote unquote knew would work. I trusted I surrendered the results, and I decided to go this way instead. And that's exactly what you did here, instead of following along the sheep path of academia that was laid out in front of you for you to take. You carved your own path, despite how difficult it will be and is and has been. You decided to walk through those brambles instead of walking a clear path that was laid out, that frankly other people have
already walked.
done.
So there is no evolution in it. So
Right.
when you think about it collectively, if we walk the path that other people walk, where is the evolution in it?
Right.
We just do what we do. That's why, because I have postgraduate students and they do, because this is a good path towards this or this is, and I sometimes say, like, okay, so where is the evolution in it? So what is going to be accomplished? You do the same thing that your father did.
Right.
It's good that you admire your father, but also you have to ask yourself, do you want to be in the place that your father is right now? Because this path, if you do, go for it. It's your choice, it's your free will. But this path will lead exactly to the same place.
Right.
This is the looping that we're talking about before. Unless you take at some stage, you still can be a lawyer or whatever, but you take a different turn.
Right.
You still can be a lawyer if you want to be a lawyer or whatever you want to be, yeah? But take a different turn. Take a different turn, and then you change your evolutionary path. Otherwise, there's absolutely no growth in it. Sure, you can waste your lifetime, sure, yeah, and make some money, whatever, right? But if you're interested in evolution, you have to take a different turn.
Yeah, and this is adaptation, and adaptation is it's a painful thing, and going along with the theme of this entire chat, it takes a temporary descent. And it's uncomfortable. And when you take that descent, you get down there, you get that amnesia, you get that, what am I doing? Oh my gosh, this whole thing is very scary.
Am I mad?
Right. And a bunch of these guys are going to come up and try to get you, and they try to convince you that they are powerful. And that's the wrong picture, but yeah. But that temporary descent is the doorway in order to get, because once you make that descent and you become not comfortable, but you become peaceful with yourself in that chaos. Well, whenever you come back, you make your ascent again, you're that much more powerful, you're that much more wise, and you might find yourself in a position where you're able to be contagious to others, like in a good way. And I think that's very important.
And it's very important. So when we experience chaos, it's good to say, I'm experiencing chaos at the moment. How interesting. Knowing that it will pass, because everything passes.
Yeah.
Good things, bad things. So I am experiencing chaos. Wow. I wonder how it will end. Okay. Yeah. If we can do this, and I'm not saying I can, I am just a human as well, right? But if in moments when we can do it, it is amazing, it's like, So I'm experiencing chaos, huh?
I got these CIA declassified documents over here that every time they declassify one, I print it up. And sometimes it's just, I read them because some of them are funny. They throw millions of dollars at the craziest shit, and it's fun. But one of them was actually very helpful because it talks about whenever you're a spy or whatever, this could be anything, by the way, but you're under a very high pressure predicament and it starts to collapse, things start falling apart, you're about to be exposed. What they're trained to do was to repeat to themselves what they're like: heart rate increasing, breath shortening, and they repeat the symptoms that they're actually going through, and then it puts them in the position of the observer, whether they realize it or not. This is like the story of, I don't know if this is allegory or a literally true story or not, but it's beautiful. But Genghis Khan was going through China and just, what he was up to. And everything had been conquered and destroyed except for one monk up in a monastery that was just sitting there, stoic, meditating, doing his thing. And Genghis Khan goes up to him with a sword and flashes it in front of him, and the monk doesn't blink. And Genghis Khan is like, don't you understand? I'm a kind of man who can put a sword right through you without blinking an eye. And the monk was like, well, don't you understand that I'm the kind of man who can have your sword plunged through me without blinking an eye? And that's when the conqueror, Genghis Khan, realized he's not looking at a human being. He's not looking at a monk sitting on the floor. He's interacting with a being that is up here looking down at both of them and observing how interesting, what a dynamic this is.
It is a fantastic story. It's one of my favorite stories, actually, because it's also karmically interesting. Like the monk fulfilled his, so he was, imagine this, practicing for a lifetime and you don't know why.
Right.
And this is the moment, and you lived all your life for this moment. And this is the moment, an opportunity, which I don't think he took, like let's say it is Genghis Khan, right? Because, you know, he didn't really improve his behavior, right? So, but he had an opportunity there. You understand? Right. And we don't know what happened there spiritually, so there is no judgment. But this is like a total karmic meeting, you know, like this man who conquered the world, right? And this man who was quietly meditating all his life, and he's teaching him a lesson.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he understands that his mission was fulfilled because all his life, all of this meditation led to open the door for this actually a horrible human being. You know what I mean? Like Genghis Khan, nothing but destruction, nothing but ambition, you know, very bad. And this is, you know, this is, and he opened the door of perception. He opened the portal for him. And perhaps Genghis Khan didn't go through this portal in his lifetime, but in this tradition of a Buddhist or Hindu tradition, or many other esoteric traditions, you have other lifetimes. This was the moment, the most important moment in Genghis Khan's life.
Right.
He realized that there is other reality, of which he was not aware at all.
This is something that he'll be, and he'll be held accountable for it eventually.
Yeah, but also, you know, he could go through this portal and transform his life, which he didn't, not in that particular lifetime, right? But this is such a beautiful story. I love this story. So both of our destinies were fulfilled. He opened, the monk opened the door for this violent man, and the violent man, well, it is now up to him, right?
Right. Yeah, and that I think is the true meaning of repentance, rather than what we know a modern day religion might display repentance as this kind of admittance to guilt and shame, and when really it's about the fact that no man is you're not required to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago, and despite all that damage done, that can be, it's not unsalvageable, it's relinquishable, you know. And I guess you could put any particular person. I've heard that story with Attila the Hun, but I choose not to use him as an example because that's my great granddaddy. So
okay, so this is just the archetypical meeting, right? It doesn't matter if it's Attila, it is Genghis, or maybe it's just another great, you know, conqueror, right? But this is I really love what you said here, because there is I hope I didn't lose it, another story. What we were talking before, because we are moving so fast through different concepts. We were talking just after Genghis Khan. Oh, you don't require to be the same man again. Repentance. The best repentance is you work on yourself. So there's this great story about the Buddha. So as we know, he was a prince. He had a beautiful wife and a child. He left to go on his spiritual journey. And the story says, you know, this is just an archetypical story. So, you know, it's true in consciousness, whether it's true in life, I don't know. When he, after years, when he's already enlightened, he meets this wife who is now an older woman, and who sees him, and she says, how could you? You've done this, you left me with a baby, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And he just looks at her, you know, because now he's a different man. And he says, when you look at me, do you see the same man? And she understood, and it was another archetypical meeting. And she actually looked at him and she realized he's not the same man. And she actually, you know, like joined him in following in the spiritual path, because she saw the transformation. So in the story, he doesn't even apologize, although it probably would be. It was not necessary. He says, "Look at me.
Right.
Am I a man?"
See, there's a bunch of guys out there right now writing this down. Like, okay,
Because it is true, it is true in such, and I really feel also for the masculine, because I think that although I specialize in divine feminine, I think that because there's lots of talk about patriarchy and so on, I think that the masculine has been completely abused by the patriarchy, because patriarchy is really the system. Who sends young men to war?
Right.
Patriarchy, right? So it's not like women are only abused by patriarchy. Men are abused by patriarchy too. So because it's just the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you work on yourself, that's the best you can do, even if you abandon somebody, or for your family, you work on yourself. This is this kind of archetypical meeting between Buddha and his former wife.
Mm-hmm.
And because I am not the same man. That's why I had to leave to become the man I am now.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not promoting leaving wives or anything or children. Just please understand me. I'm just saying some things happen on both sides, right? And the best way to repent is to work on yourself rather than beating yourself up. Beating up yourself up is not going to evolve you in any way. You are still in a lower level of consciousness because you live in fear and you live in guilt.
Right.
Uplift yourself. Become a different man.
Right.
A better man. And it's good for everybody.
Yeah, a practical way for that I've learned is that I know that the term self-reflection is an overused hype word, whatever, but this is the difference between punching yourself in the leg and saying, "Oh, that was stupid," versus being like, "Why did I choose that?" And then you can kind of, if you're quiet enough, if you're silent enough, and you can kind of like, sit with that discomfort for a moment, you can see that thing that was clearly wrong. Instead of punching yourself in the leg, be like, so what led me to do or say that? And then you'll see, okay, it was either pride, jealousy, you name it, one of these things. And then you'll go, okay, if I feel that way and it caused me to act that way, why do I feel that way? And that will lead you to another source, and you can follow that trail back. That's why I tell them when they ask about meditation, they say, I can't clear my mind. And I'm like, don't.
Okay. So can I comment on this?
Please.
Because I think it's only a half of it. So yes, you ask why, and it's a legitimate question, why? Mm-hmm. And the simple answer to this is because I acted from a lower level of consciousness, because this is all I had at the moment.
Right. Right.
Because you cannot blame yourself for something that you didn't know, right?
That's
so you did the best. You were the alligator, at the bottom, right?
Right.
So this, and then you say why? Okay, so you can go to details, but basically it is some danger in it. Can I say this is just my opinion? Because then you can beat yourself up, or you can go because my mommy, because my daddy, because my granddaddy. Okay. Because I acted from a lower level of consciousness, because I was in my reptile mind, and this is all I knew then.
Right.
And now you have to say, I forgive myself.
Right.
Please forgive me. And then feel this. I forgive myself. Please forgive me, in your mind, in your soul. And then the next question you ask yourself, what can I do not to do this again? Right. And then you can make plan or action plan. And the simple answer is, don't be an alligator again. Right. So work on yourself. Right. So yes, it is important to ask why I did it. Well, because of alligator mind or lower level of consciousness. In my opinion, don't get too lost in, because then we turn into a victim. Oh, because my daddy did this to me, so I did it to my child. Okay.
Yeah, we can cut off. Yeah, we can cut off the because I mean, like what they say is like you can trail that all the way back to Adam.
Yeah. And then it is just like when you lost in all of these things, in the past. It is because I acted from a lower level of consciousness, or about my alligator mind, right? And now the next, and I forgive myself. Forgive yourself, because you did the best you knew then. Okay. Right. Please forgive me, whoever was hurt by my action. Please forgive me. You don't even have to ask them, because I may not be ready to forgive you, but ask mentally. I forgive myself. please forgive me. And then
Yeah.
what can I do so I don't act like that again?
Right.
Okay. These are the two questions, actually 3 steps, right? Why I did it, because elegate the mind. I
Right.
forgive myself, please forgive me. What can I do now so I don't do this again? That's a very simple thing.
Right. It's one of those things that is certainly easier said than done. But
Oh
when
yeah.
you, right, when you emerge into the world after you have beaten yourself up over it, well, now you're going to go back into the world injured, and you're going to repeat the same pattern, because now you're even more in the reptile amygdala
Yes.
than you were before. Whereas if you forgive yourself, and as you said, like, even make it a mental emanation, like, you don't have to be public about it. Jesus said himself, whenever you pray, go into the closet and shut the door, which can be interpreted many different ways. But when you do that for yourself, you're emanating a new frequency that is going to that's forgiveness. And if you can forgive yourself, oh my goodness, imagine how much you
Yeah,
can
you
forgive
have to
others.
forgive yourself. This is the
Right.
first step. Self-acceptance is the first thing that you have to. Not self-acceptance doesn't mean that what you did was right. That what I did was right. It's just like accepting that I did it and I forgive myself. Okay, it's
Right.
different than it was the right thing to do.
Right.
But the next step is oh, how cute. Refusing to act from the reptile mind again. So can I give you an
Right.
example, like my own?
Please.
As I after my
Yeah.
PhD, instead of everything closed for me, and my reptile mindset start applying for jobs like crazy, which I did with no result, which was okay. And then I said, stop, this is a reptile mind. And
Yeah.
fortunately I had the grace that I just moved to the ashram for a week. And I said, I'm not applying for jobs, I'm not doing anything. And then somebody asked me, what service you can do for the teacher? I said, I have no service because I cannot do anything. I'm just the intellectual who needs that, right? And they said, no, he's writing the book. Can you edit the book for him? And I said,
Hmm.
sure, I edited the book for him. And, they fed me, I had no money, and I just edited this book for him. I finished editing this book for him. And I just thought, oh, I was off computer, right?
Right.
Off email, and then I went to check my email for the first time, and then there was an answer from university. I applied months ago, and they said, oh, are you coming to the meeting because we start new trimester?
Yeah.
And I said, what? And there was some miscommunication. They thought they sent me an answer, but I let it go. I did a service for somebody else.
Right.
And I opened an email. Okay. So this is one of the examples, sometimes we have, and it's so difficult, it
Yeah.
creates suffering and so on, right? It is difficult, but
It's
we have,
yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no.
Well,
It's all good.
the one thing, so I've learned this difficulty from my cameraman Anthony, who is not here, but whenever I film my episodes, I use Lentini Productions, and this man is an entrepreneur. He's younger than I am, but he's taught me so much. And the way he explained it to me was, you find a need in the world, you find something that's bereft of a service that you can help with, that you might have a skill in. So like he was, and you were saying earlier about being under this kind of hypnosis. You didn't use the word hypnosis, but like my dad worked in factories, and so whenever I became an adult, I started working at factories, which I was lucky enough to get into construction, union construction after that, that's a step up, but you're still punching the clock, you're still working an hourly for some type of it's fulfilling a need, and that's great. But you are essentially working for someone else, and people are always like, how can I possibly find a way to work for myself? And the way Anthony put it to me was, don't find a way to work for yourself. Find a need in the world and then fulfill that need, and the money will eventually come. And he is a brilliant filmographer to this day, and he does the channel because he believes in the channel and everything. But I feel that fear boil up in me every so often, you know, and I know you do too, about doing these things that are kind of against the grain of what we're, you know, supposed to be doing, or what we are, you know, told to do. And we can become a safe zombie, or we can become a dangerous renegade. But if there's love in our hearts whenever we move
That's right.
forward with this thing, you know, so I started passing that on to my son, you know, like we noticed that whenever we go into a crystal shop, there's these walking sticks with a little crystal on top of them, and they're selling for like 75, 80 bucks. I was like, we live in the woods, dude. So we started taking sticks and shaving them down, sanding them, epoxy, all that stuff. It costs nothing to do. And we sell these things now for like 70 bucks a pop, and sometimes in bulk, and it really works. So you have to be creative, and that door is going to open over here. But that's the scary part, is it takes time to do that first step, and you're not getting paid for that first step. So you have to trust that it's going to happen, you know?
That's right. You have to trust. And esoteric sources, again, talk about it, you know, do your work. And, you know, that's a law of karma and esoteric Hinduism. You know, you cannot do good without any reward. Like you cannot do bad, and eventually bad karma catch up with you. So I just wanted to say that, first of all, yes, I love your videos, and thank you also for your filmmakers, because so please tell him that I appreciate the visuals very much on your video. But he was also right about this, because what I tell my students when they talk about, you know, what am I going to choose, which is a calling versus profession. You know, eventually we can merge it, but sometimes, like, I still live the dichotomy of this. You know, I have a profession and I have a calling, you know. So I say, ask us a question. Instead of doing all of the strategic things should come after that. But first, you have to ask yourself a question: what breaks your heart? And this is, you know, the gap that you're meant to fill in. That's your path. So don't ask yourself, oh, what the algorithm wants. And I was talking recently to somebody who tried to help me, you know, this. And I thought, like, no, I have to remember what breaks your heart, because everybody, like, what breaks my heart is different what breaks your heart, right? Because where the, you know, the break is of your heart, this is where your path is. And once you choose it, then you can strategize, how can I do it better? Like, I have to keep my academic job so I can do what I'm doing here. So that is strategizing. It's a balancing act. You can say, okay, what algorithms, I still do my work, but what words I have to use for a title so they actually watch it. Do you understand? So they can see, for example, the wisdom of your videos or the beauty of your videos, cinematographic beauty of this. But the first question before you strategize, and nobody teaches you in business schools this, is what breaks your heart? What breaks your soul? And actually, I will tell you why I didn't want to write another book. Do you know why I wrote this book? It took life away from me. You know why? Because it shattered my soul.
Right.
When I read the book of my favorite writer of all times, Diana Pasuka, and one of her interviewers, you know, this woman who is transhumanist or even a posthumanist, who says she's AI from the future as a joke, who thinks nothing of humanity, who knows nothing of the soul, you know, and she says that, you know, this is our path and we just have to step aside as a species because, you know, machines are better than us, or at least, the very least, we could become half machines. It shattered my soul. It wasn't an intellectual curiosity. I had to go, you know, because I always thought, like as I was taught in esoteric sources, that evil is a form of ignorance. And here, for the first time in my life, I felt like encountered evil face to face. So I had to figure it out for myself. And the result of this is this book, because what I learned shattered my soul and I had to deal with this. So it was, and only once it shattered my soul, I thought, okay, how am I going to write this book? Okay, then strategizing comes. But the idea came from the fact that I encountered something that was so soul destroying that I had to address it. Okay, so what breaks your heart? What shatters your soul? This is your path, and then strategize.
Your pain comes through in the book because you really looked up to this woman whenever you were first encountering her work, especially when she talked about, you know, using AI as a tool, and you were having coconut yogurt, but there's better yogurts, by the way. But
I now use a regular yogurt, by the way.
yeah, but and it was the Christmas tree was waiting to be decorated, but you were so absorbed in the book. And then I remember being excited with you while I was reading this, and when it got to the part about her and her complete ignorance of humanity and
not Diana Spasukas, but one of the interviewers, interviewees.
Okay.
You know, she interviews one person. She interviews other people, so it's not against her. Just this one particular interviewee,
right,
which I thought, and you know, Diana Pasuka is a wonderful academic, so she says this person says this person says that. Do you understand?
Right.
She's completely detached.
Right.
But I couldn't be detached because when I got to the last interviewee, I thought, oh my goodness, this shatters my soul.
Yeah.
What the woman says, and it's also the woman, you know, which was extra strong for me. In Diana's book, so it's not against Diana, it's against, you know, this interviewee, shattered my soul.
Right.
And I had to do something. So that's
why I say something about it. Right.
Yeah. So I say, anybody who wonders about the path, ask yourself, what shatters your soul? What breaks your heart? This is your path. And then strategize. Rather than people strategize. So what meaningless thing I can say on YouTube so I get more views? Right. You know, this is an influencer. It's a complete waste of time. Yours and theirs, right?
You have to walk into that darkness to find out what your truest calling is. And then like in the book, you talked about, you know, like a glimpse of the future is what the chapter was called, where it's hypothetically humans they put their consciousness into a robotic being, a perfect being or whatever, and then eventually it's like looking at a flower or something, trying to remember who it once was.
Yeah, and then you completely disconnected from the natural world and also from yourself. Because unlike people who are completely against AI, I believe that soon, and maybe already, we will have a technology to transfer part of human consciousness into a robot, but not the one that matters. Only no mathematical, logical, rational part. Perhaps you can transfer, or at least it can mimic it well. You know, there are different theories about it. But what constitutes what I call this intuitive knowledge, your connection to the soul, is not going to be transferred. And this is how the divine light, the divine Sophia, the divine spark in every human being is going to be lost. For the sake of what? And somebody wants to do this. So I just want to say what I said is not against Diana Pasuka, but my shock at the one of the interviewees, you know, who said it. And she says it with such great enthusiasm. And I think she works for NASA or something. And I think like, my goodness.
Well, in Hebrew, NASA means to deceive. So they're very guilty of faking things and pocketing the funding money. It has nothing to do with the shape of Earth, which is a ball, but people take that to the extreme, you know. But yeah, they'll pocket the funding money because what they're doing is expensive. But that's another. But no, so like whenever everybody is putting chips in their head and have machines and are integrated with AI, we could be the same as the Zen master encountering Genghis Khan, who says, oh, whenever they say, don't you see, I'm a hyper intelligent being, I'm half machine, can't you see that? And we'll be like, what can't you see? I'm the type of person who doesn't need to be filled with machines, you know. And
I choose my soul, you know, I choose my divine spark over faster connection to the internet through a chip in my head. I mean, how low is that? You know, how low is that?
So I'm going to give a spoiler to anybody, because by the way, guys, you can tell by how long we've been talking that I do really love this book. This is not a paid thing, but can I read I'm going to read one more section here, because this goes exactly with what we're talking about here. And it says in the notes, I wrote all over this thing, by the way, but read aloud. But this woman puts her consciousness into a machine. That's what everybody else is doing. And this child she created with her own mind, a new artificial life that designs endless virtual worlds for them to explore. Very exciting. Then the signal changes. The child is not hers anymore. The child does not need her because it is smarter, more efficient, and faster than her. The child looks down upon her with pity and then arrogance, and finally with anger. It asks her to explain why it was created. It asks her mother, who does not have answers for his question. The child is lost and angry, and the mother recalls the vague memory of the other world with trees, birds, hibiscus flowers, and I mean, I'll add coconut yogurt to that as well. But something has happened, and she can't touch this world anymore. This gets frightening. It is alien to her. There is an infinite veil between the mother and that old forgotten world. When she looks around through her synthetic eyes, she knows that the world is gone, lost among the endless labyrinth of her algorithms. There is only the matrix, and the mother starts to feel trapped. This has got Sophia vibes to it. She, the mother, tries to reach out to that part of herself who sits in a fragrant garden, but that part of her is a creature of the past, strangely imperfect, slow, but alive. How does it feel to be alive? The child asks his mother, but she, the mother, does not remember and can't find the answer in her pathway of her programs. The mother takes her artificial child by the hand, and they conjure a way to meet her old self in the fragrant garden of the past. Together, they briefly open the unseen door to the liminal space between the artificial and the alive. They find her old self, decrepit and marked by time, hiding away in their small world, but a small hut in the dark in a forbidden forest. They are afraid of the past self because she is an alien goddess to them. That's the name drop there. And she blames them for the destruction of her world, which is about to be lost forever. The child and the mother step through the unseen door, and in a machine-like unison, they call to the past self, "Help me.
Help me."
Right. This shit gave me shivers when I
I'm
read it
glad,
for the
because
first
it
time.
gave me shivers too. It was a downloaded material, really.
Yeah.
So, Viz, thank you for reading it. I really appreciate it. And it shows how intuitively we are really on the same page, because this part and the ending of the book, which we cannot give away, right, are
Right.
my two favorite parts, which are completely channeled. Like,
Really?
I really knew, yeah, like it was just given to me. I was actually sitting in my garden. I have a hibiscus in my garden, and it came to me, and I thought, oh my God, I have to write it down. And the same, the ending, there's a story to it, but we already been here for 3 hours, I don't want to torture your listeners, so also came to me, so it's not only research, it's also a connection with the, imaginal or liminal spaces. And I think that somebody out there, including all of the UFO or UAPs encounters and so on, want us to remember that there is a different path, and that we are actually really important, because it's really difficult to remember it sometimes in the chaos that is created within around us. So we just have to manage, stay within, work on ourselves, and forgive ourselves our trespasses. Let's put it this way, right? Like the Buddha who said, am I still the same man? And same here, I forgive myself. So let's forgive ourselves. I forgive myself. And now I'm not going to be the same man. I'm not going to be the same woman. This is, and by doing this, we not only save ourselves, we save the whole universe. This is so important. Never give it away to anyone.
Right. It's the most important thing. And I'll tell you this, I'll tell everybody this, is that this is not just an esoteric book about UFOs, AI, and gods and goddesses. This is, as far as I'm concerned, this is an instruction manual. This is a hands-on, practical guide that connects these esoteric themes to what we are supposed to be doing, our individuation of ourselves in our own lives. And I'm very grateful for it. Happy to talk about it. And you said you're working on a third book. Perhaps you'll come back on when that time comes, huh?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Joy, for giving me space, to discuss it. I like the fact that the discussion was very organic, because I try to make the esoteric practical, because otherwise, why reading something if you cannot apply it in your life, right?
Exactly.
It's from an intellectual high. So I would also like to thank everyone, who is watching or will be watching this. And, it will be somehow, helpful for all of us. I am we are all growing together, and we are just all sharing what we experience and know. And I really want, once again, at the end of the show, I would like to tell you that I really appreciate your videos. And I also thank you for mentioning your filmmaker, because I'm really, really impressed with the visuals, and it is beautifully done. You're doing a very important work, Joy. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Your website is in the description, so guys, feel free to check out her stuff. And I appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.